Chapter 787. Fanio City, Shui Kingdom. As the sun rose, Wang Xiaoyao pushed open the door of his study. He stood in the courtyard and slowly moved his body, which was a little uncomfortable after sitting for a whole night. The cold morning breeze shrouded the luxurious manor. Wang Xiaoyao was stretching his chest expressionlessly. He walked up to a tall bell tower at the center of the manor. Two heavily armed elites of the Beihai Corps stood on the bell tower and saluted. Wang Xiaoyao nodded. He walked past them and looked down at the surrounding area. It was the largest manor in Fanio City, and also the newest and most luxurious manor. There were a few villas scattered in the manor. A huge castle built in the medieval style at the center had yet to be completed, but most of the defense equipment was almost complete. The bell tower was the tallest building within 5 kilometers of the manor. It was also the perfect vantage point. The manor was built on the outskirts of Fanio City. It had a wide view and a peaceful world. Standing on the bell tower, one could see the downtown area of Fanio City, as well as the military base that was under construction near the manor. Wang Xiaoyao looked at everything with satisfaction, as if he was looking at his kingdom. Over a year, when everyone knew that Wang Xiaoyao was getting further away from Mount Dibing, the Beihai Corps here was still called the Beihai Corps, but it had expanded to almost 100,000 soldiers. Everything was carried out according to the Fanio Agreement. Wang Xiaoyao was appointed as the new mayor of Fanio City. He monopolized all areas of Fanio City in the shortest time possible and expanded aggressively. He kept sucking the blood of Shui Kingdom, and had now become the true overlord of the dark world of Shui Kingdom. The manor in front of him and the unfinished castle were the headquarters that Wang Xiaoyao had prepared for himself. The military base outside the manor was under construction. The Beihai Corps consisted of almost 100,000 soldiers. Some of the most elite soldiers would be stationed here in the future, while the rest would spread across Shui Kingdom to absorb the local elites. Over a year had passed. It was neither a long time nor a short time, but Wang Xiaoyao had completely taken root here. Over a year ago, no one could have imagined that the playboy of Beihai, who seemed to have nothing better to do, would be able to do it. After the label that he had disguised for a long time was torn off, every step of his development in Shui Kingdom was so shrewd, decisive, ruthless, and conscientious. Wang Xiaoyao silently looked at everything in his sight, standing silently and motionless. Light footsteps sounded from behind him. An ordinary man who looked less than 40 years old climbed up the bell tower. Seeing Wang Xiaoyao's back, he smiled and said, "I knew you were here. What are you thinking about?" As he spoke, he handed the thermos cup in his hand to Wang Xiaoyao. Wang Xiaoyao took it and took a sip. The taste was average. Tea could almost be regarded as a luxury in snow country. He frowned but did not care about it. He just whispered, "I'm thinking about the next step." Next step? The middle-aged man had a playful look in his eyes. "One North Sea Legion base is enough. I don't like it when people refer to this place as a North Sea Legion branch base." Wang Xiaoyao whispered. The middle-aged man's pupils suddenly shrank, and he said with a solemn expression, "Have you decided?" The army stationed in the Snow Empire was none other than the North Sea Legion. Or rather, they were soldiers from the North Sea Legion who had come to the Snow Empire. Wang Xiaoyao wanted to rename the army. It sounded like nothing, but everyone knew what it meant. It was almost equivalent to officially separating the army here from the Wang family of Beihai. It was not only in reality, but also in name. Once the army here had a new name, it meant that Wang Xiaoyao had really parted ways with Mount Dibing. "It's not a good time." The middle-aged man shook his head. "There's nothing inappropriate about it." Wang Xiaoyao said slowly, "We've developed to this point and have reached a bottleneck. Renaming the army is just the beginning. After more than a year, the purge is almost done." The middle-aged man was silent. Wang Xiaoyao's purge was extremely cruel. Over the past year, almost all the members of the North Sea Legion who had come here had been purged. A small number of them were originally Wang Xiaoyao's cronies, while the others were all on the purge list. Wang Xiaoyao kept transferring people from the North Sea Legion blatantly. Those who could be named by him were basically his direct subordinates. Mount Dibing naturally knew this. They didn't want to fall out with Wang Xiaoyao for the time being, so Mount Dibing had never refused Wang Xiaoyao's transfer orders. As his direct subordinates came to Snow Empire one by one, the officers of the North Sea Legion of Snow Empire disappeared one by one. Those who obeyed him would prosper, and those who opposed him would perish. It could be said that Wang Xiaoyao had played the 8 words to the extreme. Batch after batch of officers who were loyal to the Wang family of Beihai and Mount Dibing were all evaporated. All those who remained were Wang Xiaoyao's direct subordinates. Judging from his current control over the army, he could indeed give a new name to the North Sea Legion of Snow Empire. The middle-aged man nodded and said indifferently, "It's up to you. It's time for me to go." He took the cup from Wang Xiaoyao's hand and drank some water. "How about the new army be called the Calamity Army?" Wang Xiaoyao suddenly said with a smile. The middle-aged man suddenly spat out the tea in his mouth and sprayed it all over Wang Xiaoyao. "What are you talking about?" "The Calamity Army." Wang Xiaoyao said with a smile. "That's my code name." The middle-aged man was a little annoyed. Heavenly Calamity. A few years ago, this was indeed a famous name in the Dark World. He was the top killer in the Dark World. However, before the final battle of Heaven Capital, Heavenly Calamity disappeared after failing to assassinate Li Tianlan. He endured for a few years and did not appear by Wang Xiaoyao's side until recently. He was a member of the Wang family of Beihai and was close friends with Wang Xiaoyao. They could be said to be best friends. "I used to be, but not anymore." Wang Xiaoyao shook his head and said, "According to the normal track, after the final battle of Heaven Capital, you should have worked for Li Tianlan for a few years. This was also the original settlement condition, but now," he sneered. "That was the settlement condition between the Wang family of Beihai and Li Tianlan. What did it have to do with him?" "You are Tianqi." He turned to look at the top killer who had disappeared for a few years and calmly told him his new code name. Tianqi shrugged and said indifferently, "Whatever you want. What do you want me to do when I set off this time?" "You act alone. But before you act, contact the people of Jifeng Sword Training School and Wuji Palace and coordinate with them. You can contact Wang Qinglei for this." Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of the Wang family of Beihai. He said softly, "Beihai province has been peaceful under his protection for too long. I should let Beihai see blood. None of the people on the list can live." Tianqi's eyes were a little complicated. After a moment of silence, he lowered his head and said slowly, "I see." Wang Xiaoyao turned around and patted his friend on the shoulder. He chuckled and said, "Have a pleasant journey." Tianqi nodded and turned to leave. Wang Xiaoyao hesitated for a moment and said in a grim tone, "If there is a chance, check up on the so-called His Majesty and see if you can find out his background. I'd like to see why he wants to talk about cooperation with me." Tianqi nodded and suddenly said, "After this chaos, Emperor Dong's palace is likely to intervene in the internal affairs of Beihai province. You should be prepared for this." "Emperor Dong's palace?" Wang Xiaoyao frowned and muttered to himself. Then he shook his head and said, "No." He said slowly, "Li Tianlan intervened. It's unlikely." "But?" Tianqi asked. "Because he's not stupid." Wang Xiaoyao's voice was calm. Tianqi's voice was also calm. "He's not stupid." Wang Xiaoyao was stunned and thought about it. Tianqi said no more and turned to leave. His phone vibrated gently in his pocket. Wang Xiaoyao shook his head and took out his phone to have a look. His body stiffened slightly. Wang Xiangxiao's communication request kept ringing, unhurriedly. Wang Xiaoyao thought for a moment and waved his hand to signal the 2 elites of the Beihai Corps nearby to leave. After they walked down the bell tower, he slowly picked up the video call. It was night in Beihai province. Wang Xiangxiao's face looked a little livid in the light of the phone. The two looked at each other through the screen and remained silent. On the phone was the sound of the waves of Beihai hitting the stage of Formidable Person, vague and familiar. Wang Xiaoyao's eyes were a little dazed. He suddenly wanted to see the stage of Formidable Person again and the stone of Formidable Person facing the waves of Beihai. "Second uncle." Wang Xiangxiao greeted him with a smile and his tone was normal. Wang Xiaoyao nodded and looked at his nephew on the screen. After a while, he slowly said, "Have you eaten?" Not yet. I'll make some supper later. Sixth sister's cooking has improved very fast recently. Wang Xingxiao's tone was natural. A smile also appeared in Wang Xiaoyao's eyes. He seemed to think of the enchantress's outrageous cooking skills. He shook his head and said softly, "Take care of yourself." Wang Xingxiao looked at Wang Xiaoyao and was silent for a long time. Then he said seriously, "Second uncle, do you care about me?" Wang Xiaoyao frowned and vaguely sensed something wrong. "When second uncle joined hands with East Island, you never cared about my situation." Wang Xingxiao smiled calmly. Wang Xiaoyao frowned. The warmth in his eyes quickly disappeared. He said coldly, "I don't know what you're talking about." Jifeng Sword Training School. Someone from Wuji Palace sneaked into Beihai Province. Second uncle, you must know about this, right? If they didn't have your help, how could it be so easy for them to enter Beihai? Wang Xingxiao's calm tone seemed to hide a needle. Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and looked more and more indifferent. This time, he didn't deny it. He just said coldly, "Which part was exposed?" Wang Xingxiao paused. Beside him, the enchantress, Xian Ming, and Lu Shuanghua trembled at the same time. Just based on Wang Xiaoyao's words, they could already be convinced that someone had indeed sneaked into Beihai Province, but it hadn't been exposed yet. Wang Xiaoyao was keenly aware of the change in Wang Xingxiao's expression. He chuckled softly and said in a low voice, "Interesting, interesting. The little guy who ran around me in the past knew how to trick me. Where did you get the news?" Jiangnan Society got the exact news that Yagyu Kurasumi appeared in Jinling and visited speaker Wang Qinglei. Their whereabouts are too careless. Wang Xingxiao said calmly. Wang Xiaoyao, who had been calm all the time, suddenly said, and felt a little confused. His expression instantly became solemn. "Yagyu Kurasumi appeared in Jinling?" he asked. Wang Xingxiao looked at him and didn't speak. Wang Xiaoyao's free hand suddenly clenched, and he fell silent for a moment. Jiangnan Society found out that Yagyu Kurasumi appeared in Jinling. He didn't doubt that Jiangnan Society had this ability. But the problem was, he was very sure. During this time, Yagyu Kurasumi didn't go to Jinling at all. Then who did Jiangnan Society find? Or rather, where did this news come from? Chapter 788. The corner of Wang Xiaoyao's mouth moved. At this moment, he seemed to want to say something. Finally, he took a deep breath, and the words on the tip of his mouth turned into a sneer. He was familiar with this feeling, but also very strange. In the chaotic situation, there seemed to be a fog in front of him. There was a shadow in the fog, obscure, nothingness, but it was real. This feeling had been enveloping the Wang family of Beihai in recent years. With Wang Xiaoyao's previous status in Mount Dibing, it was not difficult to detect the vague shadow. But it was precisely because their existence was so ethereal that the Wang family of Beihai could not detect anything most of the time. Many times, a word, a small thing, seemed to have no impact at the time, but it often took a long time for them to realize what it meant. That might be the beginning of a plan, or the key to a plan. And this time, Wang Xiaoyao had this feeling again. The shadow seemed to have left Beihai and penetrated into Eastern Europe. In the shadow, a pair of eyes were calmly watching him. Wang Xiaoyao did not know whether it was a test or another conspiracy. Wang Xiaoyao could not even grasp all the key points in it. Yagyu Kurumi was one of the key points. But Wang Xiaoyao was really sure. Yagyu Kurumi did not go to Zhongzhou State during this time, nor did he go to Jinling to visit Wang Qinglei. In fact, Wang Qinglei's cooperation with Jifeng Sword Training School was entirely carried out through His Majesty. During this time, Yagyu Kurumi had been paying attention to Dallos and had never left. But Jiangnan Dao found Yagyu Kurumi in Jinling. Countless possibilities extended in an instant. Was there something wrong with His Majesty and Yagyu Kurumi? Or was there something wrong with Jiangnan Dao and Lu Shuanghua? Or could it be that another force that he had not noticed had intervened in the current situation? Wang Xiaoyao was silent for a long time, and his eyes became colder and colder. How many people are in Beihai? Wang Xingxiao looked at Wang Xiaoyao in the video and asked slowly. "I don't know." After a long silence, Wang Xiaoyao finally said lightly, "Maybe you think too much. No matter when, there will be some foreign forces lurking in Beihai province, just to collect information." Wang Xingxiao said with some mockery, "Is collecting information worth Yagyu Kurumi, a great grandmaster of East Island, coming to Jinling? What does he want to do?" "I don't know." Wang Xiaoyao said lightly. "There must be some people hidden by you, second uncle. You just admitted it. Now, I want their locations." Wang Xingxiao tensed. He stared at the screen. The corners of Wang Xiaoyao's mouth gradually raised, and he still said the same words, "I don't know." Wang Xingxiao fell silent. The atmosphere seemed to be extremely stiff. Yao Ji and Xian Ming were a little nervous. For more than a year, Wang Xiaoyao was in Snow Country and had almost never contacted Mount Dibbing. It might be good or bad if he didn't contact him. Now, when Wang Xingxiao contacted Wang Xiaoyao for the first time, the confrontation between the two sides was instantly revealed. It was almost tantamount to a falling out. If the news got out, it would undoubtedly make things worse for the Wang family of Beihai, which was already in a bad situation. Second uncle, Mount Dibbing has a history of hundreds of years and Beihai province has a history of hundreds of years. Our countless glory and brilliance are all accumulated by our desperate efforts. You are one of the most core members of the Wang family of Beihai. Do you really have the heart to see the Wang family of Beihai destroyed like this? Wang Xingxiao asked in a low voice. No one can destroy the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said, "It's just that there are some problems in the Wang family of Beihai now. Similar problems have appeared more than once in hundreds of years. Since there are problems, we must correct them. After correction, Beihai will become better." He looked straight into Wang Xingxiao's eyes and said slowly, "I will correct the problems of the Wang family of Beihai. Only in my hands, the Wang family of Beihai will become stronger and stronger." "In your hands?" Wang Xingxiao sneered. "In your hands or in the hands of the parliament of Zhongzhou State?" Beihai, Wang Xiaoyao was silent for a while and said lightly, "It has always been a part of Zhongzhou State. No one can deny that." Wang Xingxiao said flatly, "For hundreds of years, as a part of Zhongzhou State, Beihai and the Wang family are worthy of Zhongzhou State. But the foundation of Mount Dibbing cannot be destroyed. We need a certain degree of freedom. Freedom requires strength." Wang Xiaoyao said slowly, "In our current situation, the freedom we want is too high. Beihai now has heavenly sons, invincible realm experts, me and hundreds of thousands of Beihai core. It only takes time. When my father recovers, the Wang family of Beihai can reach the peak of hundreds of years. I don't think our strength is weak now." Wang Xingxiao said coldly. Wang Xiaoyao smiled and shook his head, saying, "If we don't agree, then, do you think there is a so-called problem now? Do you think you can lead the so-called Wang family of Beihai to the peak again if you destroy the current Mount Dibbing, the current Beihai, and your biological elder brother? Do you insist on your opinion?" Wang Xingxiao looked at Wang Xiaoyao and said, "The Wang family of Beihai is very big. Second uncle, there are very few family members who are really close to you. You have destroyed all the family members. What about the Wang family of Beihai?" "You don't understand," Wang Xiaoyao said quietly. Wang Xingxiao smiled. His eyes were a little cold. "I really don't understand, and I don't need to understand. But you should know that Beihai still has me. No matter what you want to do, I won't agree." He slowly straightened his body and said in a tougher tone, "I am the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. Everything in Beihai province is mine and belongs to me." Wang Xiaoyao looked at him playfully and did not speak. "Second uncle, what I give you is yours. I won't give it to you." Wang Xingxiao looked at Wang Xiaoyao deeply and said, "You can't take it." Wang Xiaoyao suddenly laughed. "I want to try." The corner of Wang Xingxiao's mouth moved. He looked at the wild Wang Xiaoyao in the video and was silent for a long time. In this state, Wang Xiaoyao was so flamboyant, but so lonely. "Second uncle," Wang Xingxiao whispered, "come back. Don't you miss home for more than a year?" The wild laughter stopped abruptly. Wang Xiaoyao looked at Wang Xingxiao silently. His eyes fluctuated violently for a moment, and then he laughed softly. I can't go back. He shook his head with a chuckle and said in a leisurely tone, since I'm here, I can't go back. No matter what, I still hope to see the second uncle from before, free and unfettered, carefree. Wang Xianxiao's eyes were complicated. When I was born, my name was given to me by your grandfather. Wang Xiaoyao whispered. Wang Xiaoyao, on the other hand, isn't it King Xiaoyao? He wanted me to be free for the rest of my life. What is the so-called freedom? It's not fighting. Only when I don't fight can I be free of worries. It's just that he was wrong, Wang Xiaoyao chuckled. How can I not worry when I'm in the Wang family of Beihai? How can I really be free? The corner of Wang Xianxiao's mouth moved. Say no more. Wang Xiaoyao calmed down and looked at Wang Xianxiao. I won't change any of my decisions. I'll take what I want. From today on, there are only two outcomes for me and Beihai. Either Beihai is mine, or I die. He hung up the video call directly. The sky above Fanio City was completely lit up. In the whistling footsteps, a loud military song sounded near the manor. That was the military song of the Beihai Corps. It was majestic and heroic, just like the sky and the sea on the land of more than 100,000 square kilometers. Wang Xiaoyao looked at the nearby base, his eyes in a trance, and he muttered to himself, death is inevitable in a man's life. Chapter 789. Li Huaqing and Shen Fengqing's itinerary was very clear. There was no surprise attack, and the process was very clear. The day before their departure, the desert prison had received notices from the President's office and the Prime Minister's office respectively. They would arrive at the desert prison at about 11 o'clock in the morning. No matter what the intentions of the two giants were, it was an unprecedented event for the desert prison. Xiao Mahai had begun to arrange as soon as he received the news. The conditions were limited, so the welcome ceremony would not be too grand. However, the huge prison had been cleaned several times inside and outside overnight, and it looked extremely clean and tidy. When Li Tianlan, who had been busy all night, walked out of the dormitory, the whole prison could be described as spotless. Li Tianlan glanced at it casually, twitched the corner of his mouth, and did not say much. Your Highness. Xiao Mahai stood dozens of meters away from Li Tianlan's dormitory. When he saw Li Tianlan coming out, he trotted directly to him, wanting to say something but hesitating. Clean up here too. Li Tianlan nodded. Wait for her to finish. Xiao Mahai smiled and said, What would you like to eat in the morning, Your Highness? Whatever. Li Tianlan handed Xiao Mahai a cigarette. Have you confirmed the itinerary? Yes, the Prime Minister and the President will arrive at the prison at about 11 o'clock. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed, and he nodded. Got it. The President and the Prime Minister came to the most secret prison in Zhongzhou State in person. Their sincerity could not be described too much. For Li Tianlan, this was also a great honor. At the same time, it could be seen how much the two giants expected for this conversation. The greater their expectations, the greater their disappointment after the conversation. For Li Tianlan, this conversation was almost equivalent to a war. Diplomacy before force. The President and the Prime Minister had given him enough face. If Li Tianlan did not accept it, then he would naturally face the anger and suppression from the two giants. He smoked silently for a long time. Xiao Mahai left silently, ready to find someone to clean up the nearby area. Qin Weibai, whose face was ruddy and looked cold and coquettish, pushed open the door of the dormitory and walked over, grabbing Li Tianlan's hair. Have you packed up? Li Tianlan smiled. Qin Weibai's face turned red, and her watery eyes glared at him fiercely. She arrived at the prison yesterday morning. After breakfast, Qin Weibai was tormented by Li Tianlan until noon. Her physical strength was almost exhausted. She slept soundly in the afternoon, and then she had a sleepless night. The entire night. The rest of the prison staff were busy cleaning up. Li Tianlan was also busy. It was not until dawn that Qin Weibai fell asleep for a while. Then she got up to tidy up the sheets and ventilate the room. Now standing in front of Li Tianlan, her legs were limp. I guess from today on, Emperor Dong's palace will have a hard time. Li Tianlan threw the cigarette butt on the ground and said softly. Yes. Qin Weibai said with a slight nasal sound. Her eyes were a little vacant and languid. What do you think? Li Tianlan asked. He would never agree to Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing's request. They might not be able to do anything to him in the desert prison, but they could suppress Emperor Dong's palace at any time. Now Xianyuan City was developing very smoothly, which was based on the massive material aid and economic support of the parliament. Once this aid was interrupted, Xianyuan City would definitely be in trouble in the short term. Li Tianlan really wanted to hear Qin Weibai's thoughts. Qin Weibai took a step forward and held Li Tianlan's hand. She lowered her head, looking a little weak and wronged. Tonight? I want to sleep tonight. She didn't have any thoughts. She really just wanted to sleep. Purely sleep. No. Li Tianlan said in a soft voice. Qin Weibai raised Li Tianlan's hand and kissed it gently. She pouted and felt even more wronged. I know you are still angry with me. I was wrong, okay? It was indeed a rare sight to see a goddess acting like a spoiled child. Li Tianlan smiled and pinched Qin Weibai's face. Let's not talk about this first. If I'm in a good mood tonight, I'll let you go. What do you want to say after Emperor Dong's palace? Difficulties will only last for a while. Qin Weibai's face leaned on Li Tianlan's palm and rubbed it gently. In this regard, we can solve it after the Wang family of Beihai talks with you. If Zhongzhou State doesn't give it, we can ask the Wang family of Beihai for it. I've arranged it before I came here. The Lin clan can donate some materials to help you get through it. The most troublesome thing is those wealthy families and funds that are investing in Tianan. The attitude of Zhongzhou State may affect their decisions. However, some wealthy families that have invested a lot will instead become our help. At that time, we can only see the specific situation and then think of a targeted way. Li Tianlan touched Qin Weibai's face unconsciously and said thoughtfully, the Wang family of Beihai is really patient. Once the news gets out, Wang Xingxiao should be here in a week at most. Qin Weibai murmured, Timon, I want to sleep a little longer. In Italos, on the huge and magnificent martial arts practice field. His Majesty, who was shrouded in starlight clouds and mist, moved his body and slowly walked down the steps of the martial arts practice field. He looked at His Majesty's back with a complicated look in his eyes. A tall and burly young man grasped the railings around the martial arts practice field tightly and looked at His Majesty's back with a complicated look in his eyes. You can think about it. As my disciple, your realm is unstable, and the chance of you reaching the peak of the invincible realm is not big. But if you have me, at least I can give you 20% more chances. His Majesty said without turning his head. I really want to know. The young man suddenly said, if you don't count the one in the Lin clan, who is the top expert in the Dark World now, you or Li Tianlan. Very few invincible realm experts in the Dark World were purged in the chaos of Eastern Europe. Several of the strongest invincible realm experts could not see any hope of recovery for the time being because of their serious injuries. In this state, Li Tianlan, who held the Xianyuan blade in his hand, had a kind of aura that could sweep the world. After he fought all the way through Beihai province, the Dark World almost thought that he was the top expert except for Lin Fengting. This title was undoubtedly very controversial. Some people thought so, but others denied it. But even if they denied it, they couldn't recommend anyone else who could compete with Li Tianlan. Wei Kunlun was the deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace and Li Tianlan's deputy. Beihai Dijiang? He was also defeated by Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao didn't make a move at all, but people didn't think he was Li Tianlan's opponent. There were still two great grandmasters in East Island, especially the one from Wuji Palace, who had been ranked in the top 10 of the divine list. But compared with Li Tianlan, especially Li Tianlan who had the Xianyuan sword, people still didn't have much confidence. Jiang Guochu didn't think he was Li Tianlan's opponent either, until he met His Majesty, who looked unfathomable. This friendly competition was proposed by Jiang Guochu. The place of the competition was also very secret, and Moraid was the only audience. After breaking through the invincible realm, All the pride that Jiang Guochu had accumulated was completely wiped out in this competition. 5 minutes. From the beginning to the end, His Majesty completely suppressed Jiang Guochu. Or it could be said that he completely crushed him. He had no power to fight back. Jiang Guochu lost completely. If this was a battle of life and death, Jiang Guochu even suspected that he couldn't survive at all. The process of the competition was simple and there was nothing exciting about it. It was a beating from start to finish. In Moraid's view, this was exactly like a father beating his son. At the beginning of the competition, Jiang Guochu immediately condensed the domain that the Jiang family of South America was proud of, which was known as the first defensive domain in the Dark World. Then His Majesty took a step and appeared in front of Jiang Guochu. The battle was completely over from that moment on. Jiang Guochu's domain was completely broken the moment His Majesty got close. Then it was time for Jiang Guochu to be beaten. Just one step had directly determined the outcome of this spar. Jiang Guochu was convinced of his defeat, but he still couldn't help but be curious. Who was stronger, Li Tianlan or the one in front of him? His Majesty's figure paused slightly. If it was Li Tianlan a year ago, he wouldn't be much stronger than you. Even with the Xianyuan sword, he wouldn't be my opponent. His Majesty slowly opened his mouth and his voice was soft. What about now? Jiang Guochu asked subconsciously. How do I know? I haven't seen him in this year. His Majesty laughed and said, I think he should have made great progress. He was silent for a moment and continued, I don't know how far he will go. But if there is no accident, I am not his opponent under normal circumstances. But under special circumstances, he won't be my opponent. What is a normal situation? Jiang Guochu's mouth twitched. What is a special situation? It's a normal situation to compete with you. His Majesty glanced at him and said with a faint smile, As for the special situation, it depends on whether I'm willing to pay a moderate price. So you can win, right? Jiang Guochu asked. It doesn't matter. His Majesty shook his head. It's not the best choice to have a conflict with Li Tianlan now. Our most important goal now is the Wang family of Beihai. Jiang Guochu narrowed his eyes. After the Wang family of Beihai, I hope you can fulfill your promise to me. Of course. His Majesty nodded. Take a break. The two from East Island are coming soon. Let's discuss it then. He nodded and left the martial arts practice field with Moraid. Your Majesty is really powerful. Moraid followed His Majesty like a lackey, flattering him like a tide. His Majesty smiled and didn't say much. Your Majesty, what do you think Wang Qinglei's choice is? Moraid asked curiously. His Majesty gave him a choice between Beihai and Kunlun City. Wang Qinglei agreed to cooperate, but he didn't tell His Majesty what he promised. His Majesty accepted it. It can only be Kunlun City. His Majesty said blandly, he can't give up Beihai, and he doesn't have the courage. Kunlun City? Moraid hesitated. So after the thing in Beihai, our goal is Kunlun City. His Majesty paused and suddenly whispered, It feels so good. What feeling? Moraid was a little confused. The feeling of standing in the center of the stage. His Majesty laughed. He patted Moraid on the shoulder. The first 10 years were the stage for Wang Tianzong and the Master of Samsara Palace. The new era is the stage for me and Li Tianlan. In the end, it will only be the stage for me. It's time for some irrelevant people to leave. Chapter 790. The helicopter roared past in the air. Li Huaqing lowered his head and quietly looked at the landscape that was gradually becoming desolate below. He suddenly asked, What do you think of the result this time? Opposite him, Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou State was sitting quietly and reading today's new newspaper. When he heard Li Huaqing's question, he was stunned and shook his head subconsciously. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, It's hard to say. You don't think so? Li Huaqing said slowly. Their private plane set off from Yuzhou today. After landing in Beijiang, they went to the military area and then took a helicopter to the desert prison. Along the way, this was the first time they discussed the upcoming conversation. There's nothing to think about. He may agree or refuse. It just depends on what he wants. To be honest, his rise is so fast that it's almost a straight line. Even if he's trapped in the desert now, it doesn't affect him much. We know too little about him, so it's hard to judge his intentions. Chen Fangqing shook his head and suddenly said, if it were Li Honghe, no. Even if Li Honghe were still alive, the success rate of our negotiation would increase a lot. Unfortunately, Senior Li died too early. Li Huaqing was silent. Li Honghe's life was absolutely open and aboveboard. He might have owed everyone, but he had no qualms about Zhongzhou State and guarding Zhongzhou State. He was the best god of war in Zhongzhou State in the past 100 years. Even during the decline of the Li family for more than 20 years, he still guarded the border of Zhongzhou State with some old people of the Li family. He devoted the first half of his life to Zhongzhou State, and his loyalty to the country was beyond doubt. If he were still alive, they wouldn't even need to make such a big fuss about this negotiation. They just needed to get through Li Honghe's work and the matter would be half done. But now Li Honghe had fallen, and a broken but wildly rising Li family had reappeared in Li Tianlan's hands. In general, Li Tianlan's position didn't need to be doubted. From this point of view, even the position of the Wang family of Beihai didn't need to be doubted. They were definitely on the side of Zhongzhou State. But whether it was Li Huaqing or Chen Fangqing, this was not what they wanted. Or more than this. Therefore, no one could tell what Li Tianlan would choose in this negotiation. Wang Qinglei's suggestion yesterday was very interesting. Chen Fangqing suddenly said thoughtfully, President, how much of his proposal do you think is for balance, and how much is for Beihai? Most of it should be for the sake of balance. How can he care about the North Sea now? And as long as he agrees to cooperate with us, our plan will succeed. He knew that he couldn't escape. As for his proposal, Li Huaqing paused. Chen Fangqing didn't say anything. He just quietly looked at Li Huaqing. His eyes were very calm, and there was no extra expression on his face. Li Huaqing subconsciously shifted his gaze and said faintly, that was my original intention. We have been involved in politics and balance all our lives. With Li Tianlan's current future and status, how can it be so easy to persuade him? If he agrees to help us, he will lose something, so we must let him gain something. This little bit of benefit won't be enough to satisfy his appetite. He spoke very slowly, and towards the end, his voice became softer and softer, as if he was trying to convince Chen Fangqing. After a brief silence, Chen Fangqing softly said, President, I can understand your approach, but I'm afraid that some comrades might not agree to it. Li Huaqing smiled. The other party's words were very euphemistic. Other comrades not only disagreed with it, but if he made his ideas public now, Chen Fangqing might support him in this matter to a limited extent, but most people in the Prince group would oppose it with all their strength. At that time, he would also suffer great pressure. Li Huaqing closed his eyes and sighed, feeling a little tired. What about you? He asked slowly. I personally agree with your behavior in principle. Chen Fangqing nodded. In this kind of thing he did not hesitate at all. As the god of war of Zhongzhou State, in more than 20 years, Gu Xingyun did not show the bearing and demeanor that Zhongzhou State should have. He is not qualified. But not too bad. Li Huaqing said, it's still because Beihai is too sharp. Let's change it. Chen Fangqing remained calm. Li Huaqing sat there and thought for a long time before he whispered, Prime Minister, do you think we did wrong? How can there be right or wrong in this kind of thing? Chen Fangqing laughed. But their existence is too dangerous, or rather, their freedom is too dangerous. Hey, for hundreds of years, Beihai province has brought us too many benefits, but the Wang family of Beihai is like a bomb that can explode at any time. No force in the world has nuclear weapons, but the Wang family of Beihai does. Such a force is enough to make any president restless. It's okay when the situation is calm, but what if it happens? It's okay when the situation is calm, but what if? No one is willing to bear this kind of danger. It's just that the Wang family of Beihai is too strong. It has been glorious for hundreds of years and has always stood at the peak. For such a long time, there have been several large-scale chaos in Beihai, but they have the Li family around them. They have always had the Li family. This may be the most successful alliance in history. Every time the Wang family of Beihai faces huge internal troubles, the Li family will stand up to protect the Wang family of Beihai and help them get through the crisis, so that many people in power can't find a chance. And now, Li Huaqing shook his head. No, not just now. You and I both know that some plans actually started more than 20 years ago. When the Li family just declined, Xianxia state secretly set up something against the Wang family of Beihai. But at that time, the Wang family of Beihai was still strong, but now, the opportunity has come. This time, the Wang family of Beihai still has internal troubles, but no one helps them to resist external troubles. They don't have the Li family around them. Under such circumstances, I really don't want Li Tianlan and the Li family to stand by their side again. Only by controlling the Wang family of Beihai can Xianxia state really have no hidden worries and be really safe. Nuclear weapons are the bottom line of Beihai, but even if we take away their so-called bottom line, they are still the world's leading superpower. Why can't they figure it out? Chen Fangqing was silent for a long time, then chuckled. Because of the sense of security. Sense of security? Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows. They have a sense of security when the nuclear weapons are in their hands, but we don't, and vice versa. Chen Fangqing said, this kind of contradiction can't be reconciled. Li Huaqing lit a cigarette and smoked in silence. This is not a problem we should consider. Beihai is right and so are we. It's just that our positions are different. Chen Fangqing said, you should think about yourself. He looked at Li Huaqing with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. Once you want Li Tianlan to gain something, you can imagine the pressure you will bear. I will retire next year. Even if you can be re-elected, my successor may not. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally, he said softly, you know what I mean. If that's the case, your re-election can't even protect the academics. Your reputation and even your end may not be too good. Li Huaqing nodded, flicked the ash off his cigarette, and laughed. So what? He shook his head. In this position, I am the president of Xianxia state. I have to do something for Xianxia state. He paused and continued, for Xianxia state. Chapter 791. The plane sped through the air. The documents clattered in his hands. Wang Xianxiao lowered his head and quickly flipped through the documents. His expressionless face tightened, and his eyes were dignified and serious. The documents in his hands were very thick, page by page. A large number of economic data and public opinion surveys were listed, as well as analysis of the future. From time to time, some weird-looking graph appeared in the dense text. Wang Xianxiao looked at it quietly without saying a word. Compared to Li Tianlan, or even compared to any other young man of his generation, Wang Xianxiao had a brilliance that others could not hide. Li Tianlan had a talent for martial arts that Wang Xianxiao could not reach, but Wang Xianxiao also had a view of the overall situation that Li Tianlan could not match at this stage. The environment he grew up in had already determined what kind of position he would stand in the future and what kind of vision he would have in the future. Whether in the judgment of the overall situation or the handling of daily affairs, his actions were natural and familiar. During the 1 year in charge of the Wang family of Beihai, all of Wang Xianxiao's actions might not be said to be brilliant and bold, but they were absolutely stable. His grasp of the family's affairs, his attitude toward the enemy, his measures in Beihai, his understanding of Xianxia state, and his future plans showed that he was a very qualified patriarch. The rotors hummed as they whistled through the air. In the slightly bumpy cabin, Wang Xianxiao quickly flipped through the documents, and his eyes suddenly froze. The parliament decided to open number 004 Armament Depot to Xianyuan City? He raised his head and glanced at Firmament sitting opposite him. Wang Tianzong was seriously injured and missing. Di Jiang was expelled from Beihai. After Wang Tianzong became the patriarch, he had been following Wang Xianxiao like his bodyguard and half of his teacher. Firmament, who had never had a clear position in the Wang family of Beihai, had now become the deputy commander of the Beihai Corps. His status was above several deputy commanders and second only to Wang Xianxiao, who was also the commander of the Corps. He was in charge of the daily affairs of the Beihai Corps. The document Wang Xianxia was asking about was also handed to him by him. The transmission channel of the document was also on the right track. The Army Ministry drafted the document, the President signed it, and the Cabinet remained silent. The document was again passed to the Army Ministry, and Dongqing Wudi signed it himself. Now, the only procedure before the document officially came into effect was the parliamentary seal. The document was drafted yesterday, and it was delivered to the various armies in the middle of the night. Such speed could be said to be truly swift and decisive. To be precise, Li Huaqing wants to open the No. 004 Armory to Xianyuan City. At present, this matter is controversial, so it hasn't been discussed in the parliament yet. However, there should be many different opinions within the parliament. Firmament said slowly. Wang Xianxia lowered his head and looked at the document. He frowned. The so-called number 004 armament was not a large-scale arms aid, but a set of extremely advanced semi-automatic weapons system with an extremely advanced detection system, flexible scanning range, a variety of weapon terminals, strong controllability, great destructive power, and extremely high precision. It could perfectly adapt to the ground war and also take into account part of the anti-air capability. This system could be said to be one of the signboards of the military of Xianxia state in recent years. The lack of a clear code number did not mean that it was not valued, but it was more secretive. If such a system was fully equipped, putting aside the high cost of construction and maintenance, it was self-evident that it would contribute to the development and rise of Xianyuan City. With this system, Emperor Dong's palace and Xianyuan City were almost invincible. Li Huaqing proposed to open the number 004 armament to Xianyuan City, which was full of courage. If this deal could really succeed, then the relationship between Emperor Dong's palace and the academics would undoubtedly be greatly eased. On the other hand, this weapon system could also greatly influence Li Tianlan's choice and position. What's the possibility of the parliament passing it? Wang Xianxia asked. It has Dongqing Wudi's signature. Firmament's tone was very tactful. But Wang Xianxia understood the meaning of this sentence. Dongqing Wudi wanted to equip Xianyuan City with the 004 system. Not to mention whether this would affect the cooperation between the Giant Group and the Southeast Group. When it came to the specific system, everyone wanted it. When Wang Tianzong was here, the Beihai Corps also applied for it twice, but they were both rejected. Now, the system was given to Xianyuan City, which showed the obvious intention of roping them in. If the parliament passed it, the Giant Group and the Southeast Group might still cooperate, but Dongqing Wudi was bound to be more conservative in the following game. After all, he was soft-hearted. What about the Southeast Group? Opposed? Opposed when their ally made it clear that they wanted it? That was what the academics wanted to see most, wasn't it? What do you think? Wang Xianxia suddenly said. It depends on how determined you are. Firmament smiled. Wang Xianxia raised his eyebrows. It's not that the Corps can't provide a weapon system comparable to 004. Firmament whispered, in terms of weapon terminals, our combination is even more reasonable. Wang Xianxia was silent for a moment. Of course, he knew which system of the Beihai Corps Firmament was talking about. But at present, 004 is indeed the most suitable system for Xianyuan City. Wang Xianxia said. Different weapon systems had different focuses. For example, the desert prison of Xianxia State and the Sky Eye system equipped with several top field armies. In terms of power alone, because this system could be said to have the most powerful firepower of all weapon systems. But its precision could also be said to be the worst. The desert prison and the field armies didn't need high precision at all. What they needed was the explosive force on the battlefield that could cover everything in an instant. The Sky Eye, which could almost kill an invincible realm expert at the peak, was undoubtedly the best choice. The 004 system of Xianxia State had the most balanced performance. Its various performances might not be the best, but it had no shortcomings. The scope of investigation, the precision of weapons, the intensity of firepower, the scanning and identification. It had everything that should be and should not be. 004 was the most suitable system for guarding a city. The Wang family of Beihai certainly had its own weapon system. Their weapon system was even better than 004's in some aspects. It was more precise and faster, but correspondingly, the range of the Wang family of Beihai's weapon system was very small. In terms of adaptability in various situations, it was slightly worse than 004's. Wang Xianxia thought silently, nodded, and then shook his head. But compared to Zhongzhou State, we are the most suitable ally for Xinyuan City. Li Tianlan can't be unaware of this. Firmament said quietly. That's true, but in the end, that's a matter for the future. I'm not saying that Li Tianlan doesn't have a long-term vision, but in many cases, even if he sees it, he may not be willing to think about it. We can't bet on whether he's willing to think about the future or not. The situation is here. If we want to persuade Li Tianlan to cooperate with us, we have to offer at least what Zhongzhou State can offer, or even more. Otherwise, this negotiation is over. Firmament nodded. Before he spoke, a loud voice sounded in the helicopter's cockpit in front of them. Report. Firmament raised his eyebrows, stood up, and said to Wang Xianxiao, I'll go and have a look. Wang Xianxiao nodded and continued to flip through the documents in his hand. Firmament left quickly, and came back even faster. In less than 2 minutes, he came back to Wang Xianxiao and said with a strange look, We seem to be a little fast. What do you mean? Wang Xianxiao smiled. Ahead, Firmament coughed. According to the signal, we are less than 3 kilometers away from the President and the Prime Minister's special plane. Wang Xianxiao raised his head and looked at Firmament. Firmament was also looking at Wang Xianxiao. Are there any missiles on our helicopter? Wang Xianxiao suddenly asked. Firmament's body trembled violently. Wang Xianxiao burst out laughing. I'm just kidding. Why are you so nervous? He stood up, looked ahead, and said calmly, Let's slow down. Anyway, we can't get ahead of them. Chapter 792. At 11:15 in the morning, the helicopter from Yuzhou slowly landed in front of the desert prison. The desert prison was headed by Xiao Mahai, the warden. All the prison guards in uniform stood in front of the prison gate to greet them. Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai stood at the forefront of the crowd. Xiao Mahai, who stood in front of all the prison guards, stood a step behind Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai. He lowered his head and looked like a slave. The sun shone on the yellow sand. In the light, Li Tianlan, who was originally a prisoner, held a stunning beauty in his arms. He looked more like the owner of the prison. In fact, it was true. And in the face of this scene, no one in the prison felt that there was anything wrong with it. Li Huaqing, who walked out of the cabin and saw this scene, still smiled and narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Chen Fangqing, who followed Li Huaqing, had a gloomy look in his eyes. It was not for any other reason. But in the heart of this giant who paid great attention to national interests and principles, Li Tianlan was a prisoner here. No matter what, he was a prisoner now. It was one thing for him to be the overlord of this place. Now he came here with Li Huaqing. Even if it was just a pretense, Li Tianlan should not be here. He should be locked up in prison. This was the rule. Even if it was only on the surface. But it was obvious that neither Li Tianlan nor Xiao Mahai thought about this so-called rule at all. Li Huaqing turned his head and glanced at Chen Fangqing calmly. Then he strode toward Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan, who should have been flattered, took 2 steps forward and took the initiative to hold Li Huaqing's hand. But his expression was very calm, even reserved. Hello, Mr. President. Li Tianlan shook hands with the 2 giants one by one. Hello, Prime Minister. Tianlan, long time no see. How are you doing here? Li Huaqing said with a smile. The last time he met Li Tianlan was before Li Tianlan came to the desert prison. At that time, the 2 might not have completely fallen out with each other, but their thoughts were different, and their relationship had gradually drifted apart. Later, Li Huaqing's right-hand man, Deputy Minister Hua, who was also a giant, also came once. Since then, the relationship between the 2 parties had become even colder. But now that they were face to face, neither of them showed any other emotions on their faces. It's good here. Li Tianlan nodded. It's quiet and suitable for meditation. How is meditation something a young man should do? Your Highness is still young, so you should be full of vigor, singing proudly all the way. Chen Fangqing said with a smile. Let's go in and talk. It's rare that I have time today. I want to have a good chat with Tianlan. Li Huaqing smiled and waved his hand. There's no hurry. Li Tianlan laughed. You may not have received the news. Today, the desert prison is very expensive. The President and the Prime Minister have graced us with their presence, but behind us, the North Sea Patriarch's helicopter is about to arrive as well. Why don't you wait and chat with us? Li Huaqing's gaze instantly deepened. He looked at Li Tianlan and said nothing. 2 helicopters arrived at the desert at the same time. If Wang Xianxiao's helicopter could receive the signal from the front, how could their helicopter not receive the signal from the back? Even if they really couldn't receive it, when Wang Xingxiao and the others passed over the Beijiang military region, someone had already reported to them. Li Huaqing was in a hurry, not because he wanted to deliberately neglect Wang Xingxiao, but because he wanted to take this opportunity to make Wang Xingxiao hesitate and misunderstand. He didn't mind Li Tianlan's delay. What he cared about was Li Tianlan's words, which seemed to be intentional yet unintentional. He was talking about the North Sea Patriarch, not the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. If Li Tianlan was an old fox who had been in the superstructure of Zhongzhou state all his life, this sentence could almost judge his position. But this sentence was said by such a young Li Tianlan. Li Huaqing really hoped that the other party's words were just unintentional. All right. Li Huaqing nodded with a smile. He glanced at Qin Weibai, who stood quietly beside Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, Patriarch Qin, long time no see. Qin Weibai smiled without saying a word. She was elegant and demure, low-key without any sharpness. Chen Fangqing also nodded to Qin Weibai. When he visited Switzerland 2 months ago, he visited Qin Weibai alone, who had become the patriarch of the Lin clan. He also vaguely talked about the situation in Zhongzhou state, but neither the Lin clan nor Qin Weibai expressed their position, which was also the reason why he felt uncertain. The whistling sound swept from the high sky behind them. The helicopter in the distant sky was getting closer and closer. The strong airflow brought flying yellow sand. Li Tianlan raised his head and watched quietly. The helicopter without any weapons landed next to Li Huaqing's private plane. Wang Xingxiao, who looked calm, walked out of the cabin steadily. He nodded to Li Tianlan first, and then raised his hand to salute Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing. Firmament followed Wang Xingxiao and also saluted. It was a tradition that the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai was also the commander of the Beihai Corps. Under normal circumstances, the commander of the Beihai Corps had no clear rank in the military of Zhongzhou state. But the deputy commander of the Beihai Corps was a veritable general of Zhongzhou state. And the treatment enjoyed by the commander often depended on the strength of the patriarch. For example, Wang Tianzong. In the meeting of the giants of the parliament, only Wang Tianzong was qualified to sit opposite Li Huaqing in the whole Zhongzhou state. Wang Xingxiao was obviously not qualified now. He took the initiative to salute. Combined with his current status, it was a low profile. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes and chuckled. Why didn't Xingxiao inform us in advance that he would come to the desert? His words were light, but they were meaningful. Firmament took out a document and said calmly, President, we have already reported to the army headquarters before we set off and got the permit signed by Minister Dongqing. The corner of Chen Fangqing's mouth twitched slightly, but he did not speak. Your Highness, President, Prime Minister, shall we go in and talk? Xiao Mahai, who had been ignored, put Li Tianlan directly in front and said cautiously, The prison has prepared a banquet to welcome you. Welcome you, Li Huaqing said to himself. He seemed to find it interesting and laughed. Well, let's go in and talk. They walked into the prison canteen at the same time. There was a small private room in the canteen that was specially used to provide food for the warden. It was well decorated. At this time, the private room was full of wine and dishes. Wang Xingxiao and Firmament, who were walking at the back, glanced at the table and slightly raised the corners of their mouths at the same time. Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing were calm, but a haze flashed in their eyes. Just because of the table of wine and dishes. Whether it was the wine or the dishes, this table was a real state banquet. And it was a very grand state banquet. It was exquisite, luxurious, and even extravagant. Chen Fangqing could not help pointing to the food on the table and looked at Xiao Mahai with a smile. Warden, the food in the desert prison is good. The table in front of us, even if we don't count the wine, is worth 6 figures. Your food and beverage expenses are very high. Someone reported that someone in the prison misappropriated funds. Is it true? Xiao Mahai smiled and said respectfully, as long as it makes His Highness feel comfortable. I don't care about other things. Li Huaqing paused. Chen Fangqing's face was a little livid. As long as it made Li Tianlan feel comfortable? He didn't care about other things? He was the King Warden here, not anyone's slave. Wang Xingxiao's smile became more and more presumptuous. This table of wine and dishes seemed to prove Li Tianlan's attitude. He glanced at Chen Fangqing, a little playful. What are you laughing at, Xingxiao? Do you think it's funny here or me? Chen Fangqing was angry. Seeing Wang Xingxiao's eyes, he immediately retorted. Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows. I can't smile? He took a step forward and instantly became expressionless, looking gloomy and majestic. I can't smile? There's murderous intent, Li Tianlan suddenly said. Chen Fangqing narrowed his eyes and looked at the indifferent and gloomy Wang Xingxiao. He followed Li Tianlan's words and said, You want to kill me? Wang Xingxiao looked straight into his eyes and said indifferently, I didn't say it was right or not right. He took another step forward and asked word by word, I said I want to kill you. Guess, how do I want to kill you? Chapter 793. Chen Fangqing's face suddenly became extremely pale. It was not because of fear. The dense sword intent continued to spread out with Wang Xingxiao as the center, occupying every corner of the box. The sword energy was so dense, so small, but so sharp. The ferocious sharpness enveloped Chen Fangqing, stabbing him all over like fine needles. He felt a little pain, a little itchy, and a little numb. His body trembled uncontrollably under the shroud of sword qi, but his eyes remained calm and cold. After all, this was not a public place. In a public place, Wang Xingxiao, who represented the Wang family of Beihai and the Beihai Corps, saluted Chen Fangqing with a serious face. The various measures of Beihai would be reported to the cabinet in name, so no one could find any fault with it. But now, in such a private place, Wang Xingxiao no longer hid anything, and the ferocious killing intent completely pounced on Chen Fangqing's face. At this moment, no matter how powerful Chen Fangqing was, his life and death were also in the hands of Wang Xingxiao. If Li Tianlan didn't make a move. Li Huaqing subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan had already sat down with his arm around Qin Weibai's shoulder and conveniently passed a delicate side dish to Qin Weibai. The sharp sword energy was completely obliterated the moment it approached him. He did not look up, as if he was really eating peacefully. Li Huaqing's heart sank slightly. He took a deep breath and said, Enough, what's wrong with you? It's just a joke, Wang Xingxiao said with a smile. He was not afraid of offending Chen Fangqing. The relationship between them had long been clear. No matter how humble he was, he could not dispel the plot of Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing. On the surface, Wang Xingxiao did not mind abiding by the rules, but in private, Wang Xingxiao was also a proud person. How could he bear this kind of humiliation? He came here with the intention of destroying the place. He didn't dare to kill anyone, but he didn't mind making the other party suffer a little. The Prime Minister seems to be too nervous. The surrounding sword energy slowly disappeared. Wang Xingxiao patted Chen Fangqing on the shoulder and said in a very sincere tone, It's really just a joke. How dare I kill people? Chen Fangqing took a deep breath, and his pale face became livid. You can try. He looked at Wang Xingxiao and said slowly, Why don't you try? Let's turn a joke into a fact and see what happens. Now is not the time. Wang Xingxiao smiled and adjusted Chen Fangqing's neckline. Kill the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State? This is too much. But I remember that the Wang family of Beihai has done something even worse. As for the consequences. He chuckled and narrowed his eyes. That seems to be the beginning of the Wang family of Beihai standing at the peak. Am I right? Something worse than killing Qin Fangqing. Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing's pupils dilated. He shrank back and stared at Wang Xianxiao in silence for a long time. Wang Xianxiao's expression was easygoing and calm. But everyone could feel a hint of madness in his expression. Is this a threat? Or a warning? An elegant voice suddenly rang out. It was as light as the clouds and the wind. Qin Weibai looked at Wang Xianxiao, and her eyes were so bright that he couldn't look at them directly. This is a joke. Wang Xianxiao spread his hands and laughed. Eat. He asked Firmament to take a seat and took the initiative to pour himself a glass of wine, drinking it in one gulp. Tisk, Wang Xianxiao put down the glass and said with a smile, "Good wine." He gave Xiao Mahai a thumbs up and said with a smile, "General Xiao is even more courageous. As long as your highness and madam are satisfied." Xiao Mahai, who was standing behind Li Tianlan, said in a flat tone. The moment he heard Qin Fangqing's words, he realized that the wine and dishes on the table in front of him seemed to have caused a misunderstanding between the two giants, and even made them think that it was Li Tianlan's attitude. Xiao Mahai really didn't think so much. He had put everything on Li Tianlan. It didn't matter whether it was the president or the prime minister. As long as Li Tianlan was satisfied, all the problems such as funding were small problems. That was what he really thought. Now hearing Wang Xianxiao's praise, his indifferent words could be regarded as an explanation. Let's eat. Li Huaqing sat down casually and picked up the chopsticks. Qin Fangqing also sat down and didn't speak for a while. Even if he had 1,000 words in his heart, he had to admit that at this time his momentum was really suppressed by Wang Xianxiao, and he seemed to be a little less confident. "What are you doing here?" Li Tianlan asked casually, glancing at Wang Xianxiao while putting food into Qin Weibai's bowl. "I want to talk to you." Wang Xianxiao looked at Li Tianlan and said seriously. "No, you're here to threaten me." Li Tianlan said. What he said just now was not only a threat to Li Huaqing, but also to Qin Fangqing and Li Tianlan. Everyone present knew why the president and the prime minister appeared in the desert prison at this time, and they also knew why Wang Xianxiao appeared here. The situation was obvious. If Li Tianlan agreed to the request of the two giants, the Wang family of Beihai would no longer have the possibility of turning the tables. They might still be the top wealthy family and superpower in the dark world in the future, but losing their biggest trump card was obviously not something Wang Xianxiao could accept. Wang Xianxiao, who had no hope of turning the tables, was bound to use all means to reverse this possibility. Anyone could be on Wang Xianxiao's list and suffer the most hysterical targeting of the Wang family of Beihai. This time was different from the last time. Last time, Wang Xianxiao showed his strength to the world. Now, Wang Xianxiao directly put his madness in front of the most important parties. "I didn't mean that." Wang Xianxiao said slowly, "No matter what, this is not my intention. I want to have a serious talk with you." Li Tianlan nodded. "After the meal. Let's wait until the prime minister and the president leave." Wang Xianxiao smiled and deliberately put the prime minister in front. Li Tianlan still said the same thing. Li Huaqing's face changed for a moment and then returned to normal. The meal was unusually dull. But with Qin Weibai beside him, Li Tianlan still ate with relish. After lunch, Wang Xianxiao took the initiative to leave. Xiao Mahai arranged a meeting room for the prison. Li Tianlan went in with the two giants. Xiao Mahai stood outside the meeting room as a security guard. Li Tianlan sat quietly in the chair and said nothing. "Tianlan, do you have any thoughts?" Li Huaqing took the initiative to ask. "What?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. Wang Xianxiao's attitude during the meal. Li Huaqing went straight to the point. "Arrogant and domineering. Don't go too far," Qin Fangqing said coldly. This was his attitude not only to Beihai, but also to Wang Xianxiao. "We've already put a knife to his neck. Do you expect him to be respectful?" Li Tianlan said disapprovingly. "First of all, no one put a knife on his neck. We just hope that Beihai province can respect the order and rules of Zhongzhou state more. Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan and said seriously, no one in Zhongzhou state wants Beihai to have different rules of the game from Zhongzhou state. They are qualified to stand at the top, but standing at the top doesn't mean that they can take things that don't belong to them. We just take away this part. The Wang family of Beihai will still be good in the future. Everyone, including me and the Prime Minister, including the Wang family of Beihai, all of us should take what belongs to us and let go of what doesn't belong to us. Like me? Li Tianlan smiled playfully. Like what about me? What doesn't belong to me? Li Huaqing was stunned and quickly exchanged a look with Chen Fangqing. Tianan. Chen Fangqing said, Tianlan, Tianan shouldn't belong to you, but to Zhongzhou state. Huh? Li Tianlan's voice was a little cold. Then what should belong to me? Kunlun City. Li Huaqing's deep voice sounded. It should belong to you. If you want, Kunlun City can belong to you from now on. Chapter 794. Wonderful free reading. If you want, Kunlun City can belong to you from now on. Li Huaqing's voice was calm, not impassioned, as if he was talking about a normal trifle. However, if these words were heard in the outside world, it would undoubtedly set off an extremely violent storm. Kunlun City represented the Special Warfare Group. All of these could belong to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan didn't like the name Kunlun City. But it didn't matter. More than 20 years ago, Kunlun City was called Zhuanyuantai. Now, as long as Li Tianlan nodded, he could change Kunlun City to Tianlan City, or even continue to call it Zhuanyuantai. No doubt. This was the offer of the Zhongzhou State Parliament. Exchange Kunlun City for Tianan. Did you give up on Gu Xingyun? Li Tianlan was silent for a long time before he asked. Even he didn't expect Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing to be so bold to exchange Kunlun City for Tianan, which showed their determination and the serious consequences of refusing this negotiation. No one denies Gu Xingyun's contribution to Zhongzhou state over the years. He has made contributions, but to be honest, he hasn't done a good job over the years. We believe in his potential and are willing to hand over the safety of Zhongzhou state to him. Chen Fangqing looked at Li Tianlan and said sincerely, Your Highness, you must believe that even in the past 20 years, no one has looked down on the Li family. What we are willing to hand over is what we think we deserve. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He knew that Chen Fangqing was telling the truth. No one could look down on the Li family. In fact, since Chen Fangqing entered the parliament, whether he was a member or elected to the Li family, he would take time to visit Li Honghe every year. Not only Chen Fangqing, but also Hua Jingyang of the academics, Zhou Yunhai of the North Group, Thunder God of the Giant Group, and Yi Dongxing of the Southeast Group. Every year, the six would send representatives to go through the motions to show their respect for Li Huaqing, the veteran. But that was all. However, Chen Fangqing's words obviously didn't mean that. Li Tianlan had heard from Li Honghe a long time ago. When talking to people, don't listen to what they say, but listen to what they don't say. What we are willing to hand over. What we think we deserve. Li Tianlan thought about it. The underlying meaning of this sentence is that we shouldn't get what we don't want to give? Li Tianlan laughed. He looked at Chen Fangqing and said seriously, You mean I can get Kunlun City, but I don't deserve Tianan, right? The headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace can be built in Tianan. Li Huaqing continued. The negotiation this time was very direct, almost without any foreshadowing. But every inch of the territory of Zhongzhou state should be affected by the will of Zhongzhou state. We allow the emergence of new groups, but we don't allow the emergence of transcendental forces that can transcend above Zhongzhou state. At this point, Tianlan, you should understand that Zhongyuan province for the Dongqing clan and Beihai province for the Wang family of Beihai are two completely different concepts. Li Tianlan nodded. It was well known that Zhongyuan province was the backyard of the Dongqing clan. But the daily operation of Zhongyuan province was still under the control of the parliament and the rules of the game of Zhongzhou state. A series of personnel appointments in Zhongyuan were operated by the Dongqing clan within the giant group. It could be regarded as the will of the group or the collective will, but the collective of Zhongzhou state. Beihai province was completely different. All their appointments were directly issued by Mount Dibing, which was undoubtedly a dictatorship in the eyes of the parliament. Moreover, they were outside the system of Xianxia state, but they controlled the southeast group remotely. Their power had developed to such an extent that it could be said to be the real peak. Even if the Wang family of Beihai was not disloyal, for those in power, they would be uneasy and find ways to weaken it. The rise of Li Tianlan made the parliament see even worse signs. They fully affirmed Li Tianlan's potential. Before he entered the invincible realm, they wanted him to replace Kunlun City, which was enough to prove this point. Now almost no one would doubt Li Tianlan's future achievements. At the age of 20, if he became the god of war of Xianxia state, it was enough to protect Xianxia state for decades, and even make Xianxia state a dominant power in the dark world. No one was willing to kill Li Tianlan, but the premise was that he knew his position. With the rapid development of Xianyuan City on the right track, Tianan had made more and more people feel uneasy. All kinds of signs showed that as time went by, Tianan would become the second Beihai province sooner or later. This was the situation that Xianxia state absolutely did not want to see. So Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing came here at the same time. They wanted to pull Li Tianlan to the right position, such as the position of the god of war of Xianxia state. Then slowly control Tianan in the name of the parliament. At the same time, Li Tianlan would play a key role in the game between the parliament and Beihai. This was the most satisfactory result for them. But this was not the result that Li Tianlan wanted. To be honest, there was no problem of whether it was a loss or not to exchange Kunlun City for Tianan. The god of war of Xianxia state had a high position and power. He kept the peace of a country by himself, and his status was transcendent. Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing were indeed very sincere. But Li Tianlan preferred a place where his family could slowly accumulate wealth and relax in peace. Li Tianlan did not think that Li Huaqing and the others were wrong, nor did he think that he was wrong. For so many years, there have been many unexpected situations in Beihai. Although these accidents are not all bad, we think it's time to make some changes. Any change will have a price, and it will also cause chaos. Tianlan, we hope to leave the desert prison immediately and temporarily take charge of Beihai to help stabilize the order in Beihai. What do you think? Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan seriously and asked. Li Tianlan's heart was in awe, and his face was expressionless. A heavy pressure came from all directions. From beginning to end, neither Chen Fangqing nor Li Huaqing mentioned Tianan much. They mostly talked about Beihai. But the present of Beihai was the future of Tianan. Li Tianlan's answer also represented a lot of things. Li Tianlan was silent. Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing's eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan, and their eyes were burning. We still have to believe in Beihai. After a long time, Li Tianlan slowly said, I believe that Beihai has a way to deal with some chaotic situations. Beihai province does not need me to take unnecessary steps to stabilize the order. After all, things have not developed to the worst extent. He spoke very slowly. Almost word by word, he said it very cautiously. But the key words still sounded extremely harsh to the ears of the two giants. Unnecessary steps. Li Huaqing's eyes suddenly narrowed. Chapter 795. Next to the conference room was a small lounge. It used to be the office of a deputy warden, but with the transfer of the powerful deputy warden, although the position was still maintained in the desert prison, the deputy warden no longer had an office. Instead, it was transformed into a lounge. That was the real superfluous move. Although the desert prison was important, it was a small place, and there would be no meetings all year round. When the news of Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing's inspection of the desert prison came, Xiao Mahai sent someone to clean the conference room and swept a thick layer of dust. The conference room was not high class, and the lounge next to it was even more so. Fortunately, it was clean and tidy after cleaning. Wang Xingxiao sat on the shabby sofa in the lounge and looked up at the oil paintings on the wall, which could be bought with 100 yuan. His expression was unusually calm. The conference room was soundproof. The sound inside was isolated, and it was quiet. Wang Xingxiao did not know the result of the negotiation. He picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. Out of the corner of his eye, A dreamlike figure just passed by the lounge. Wang Xianxia straightened up subconsciously. Qin Weibai, who passed by the lounge, turned to look at him and nodded slightly. Without any hesitation, Wang Xianxia made an inviting gesture through the transparent window. His eyes were still calm. It was a kind of calm that was almost empty. There was no confidence or anxiety. He was so calm that it was chilling. Qin Weibai's bright eyes blinked. She hesitated, then pushed the door and walked into the lounge. "Hello, Patriarch Qin." Wang Xingxiao's voice was soft and quiet. After the destruction of the Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai jumped from the number 2 figure of the Samsara Palace to the patriarch of the Lin clan, a hidden giant. The news had not spread wildly in the dark world, but it was not a secret. It was similar to the Lin clan. Even if they were hidden, how could the world not know of their existence? Not to mention other things, some of the branches of the Lin clan that spread all over the world were a force to be feared. The Lin clan had many branches. Their forces were loose, but they were extremely large. They had not had internal strife for hundreds of years. If the forces of all the branches were added together, it was a force far beyond the Wang family of Beihai. However, it was impossible for the Lin clan to make use of all the branches. Under any circumstances, the Lin clan could be said to be a retreat for the Wang family of Beihai. However, the battle in Eastern Europe made Lin Fengting put down a lot of stubbornness. From the moment Qin Weibai became the patriarch of the Lin clan, the years of friendship between the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan seemed to have disappeared. "What's the matter?" Qin Weibai sat down opposite Wang Xingxiao. Her slender legs were crossed. The strength of Beihai province is not impossible to survive, but it needs a balance. More than 20 years ago, it was the Li family who maintained this balance. At that time, although Beihai was strong from the standpoint of Zhongzhou state, the Li family could balance Beihai. More than 20 years later, Zhongzhou state has Emperor Dong's palace. The Li family was wiped out by Yu. Qin Weibai's voice was cold. Wang Xianxiao was silent for a while and said slowly, "I'm willing to pay the price as long as he is willing to talk." Qin Weibai stood up and shook her head. "I will tell Tianlan your attitude, but how to choose this matter is up to him. I won't interfere." She took a step forward and was about to leave the lounge. "Is she all right?" Wang Xianxiao suddenly asked. Qin Weibai paused and raised her eyebrows. "The one in Switzerland." The sword intent enveloped the lounge. Wang Xingxiao's subtle voice came along the sword intent. "Li Tianlan. You don't know the one in Switzerland, right?" Qin Weibai's figure suddenly became stiff. She turned around little by little and looked at Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao looked calm. So calm that it was a little hollow. "What do you mean?" Qin Weibai asked word by word. "Give me a hand." Wang Xingxiao said slowly, "I just want you to help me." "So," Qin Weibai sneered. "Is this a threat?" "Don't forget, if Tianlan knows about this, I don't have to say anything. No one in the Wang family of Beihai will survive." "I know." Wang Xingxiao nodded. "So this is not a threat. This is just a request." He slowly sat on the sofa and finally lit a cigarette. He took a deep breath. "I have no choice. Now it seems that this matter is not the most fatal for Beihai. Li Tianlan and the parliament have joined hands. Whether I tell them or not, Beihai will not have a chance to win." His voice was calm and a little crazy. "So, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I tell them or not. I can keep the secret and try to wake her up, but only if you can show me hope." He held the cigarette hard and said in a low voice, "Have you been to the stage of formidable person?" "Huh." He took a deep breath. "The weight of the whole Beihai is there." Qin Weibai looked at him silently for a long time. "I don't accept threats." After a long time, she said slowly, "I'm sorry." Wang Xianxiao looked at her and said, "Answer me a question." Qin Weibai suddenly spoke. Wang Xianxiao was stunned and narrowed his eyes. "Go ahead." "What's the matter with Wang Xiaoyao? Why did he do this with you?" Qin Weibai asked. Her eyes were cold and rational. Wang Xingxiao's pupils suddenly contracted, And he did not speak. Did he embarrass you? Qin Weibai smiled faintly. Wang Xianxia was silent for a long time before he exhaled. I don't know. A bright light flashed in Qin Weibai's eyes. She looked at Wang Xianxia and nodded. I see. Chapter 796. Wang Xianxia said that he didn't know what was going on with Wang Xiaoyao. He didn't know why he officially broke with Mount Dibing. He didn't know why he betrayed Wang Tianzong. He didn't know. Most of the time, not knowing was an answer in itself. The three simple words could be described as really broad and profound. He really didn't know. He didn't know how to say it. He didn't know if he should say it. He didn't know if he could say it, or what was the use of saying it. There were countless possibilities, but they could all be described as not knowing. Wang Xianxia sat on the sofa, his expression as calm as a rock. If this was an exchange or a deal, then he had already shown the greatest sincerity. He gave Qin Weibai the answer. In that case, would Qin Weibai help him? Then he heard Qin Weibai's answer. I got it. Her voice was elegant and carried a kind of pure literal meaning. I got it. Wang Xianxia looked up at her and thought, what do you know? But he didn't ask. He just said, I hope Patriarch Qin can help me. I will try to persuade Tianlan if he doesn't agree to Zhongzhou state now. Qin Weibai said, but I won't guarantee anything. Wang Xianxia said, and took a deep look at her. Thank you. He put out the cigarette but in the ashtray and narrowed his eyes. When he was about to say something, he suddenly noticed a faint gaze falling behind him. Wang Xianxia turned around subconsciously. In his sight, separated by a seemingly ordinary glass, Qin Weibai was standing outside and looking at him with a calm expression. Wang Xianxia was suddenly shocked and turned around subconsciously. Qin Weibai, who had been standing in front of him, had disappeared. The corner of Wang Xianxiao's mouth twitched, and then he found that there was no natural and rich fragrance in the lounge. Keep your so-called secret, because in many cases, even if you can say it, the person you face may not be true. Qin Weibai said, nodded, and turned to leave. Wang Xianxiao's face turned livid. He slowly sat on the sofa and finally smiled bitterly. The prison was extremely cold. The president and the prime minister came for an inspection. Everyone in the prison kept to their posts, and the prisoners were also strictly watched. The corridors of the prison seemed extremely empty. Qin Weibai walked all the way, and the sound of her high-heeled shoes on the ground echoed clearly. Xiao Qing, who felt a little lost, reorganized Li Tian. As soon as she stepped out of Lan's room, she saw Qin Weibai walking over. She froze, bit her lip, and hesitated for a moment before saying softly, Madam, I'll clean up this place from now on. Qin Weibai nodded and said casually. Xiao Qing wanted to say no, but facing this woman, she didn't have the courage to speak. She nodded silently and whispered, What does Madam need? I'll take a break. Qin Weibai waved her hand. She seemed to have thought of something that she would have to endure at night. Her bright eyes became moister, with helplessness and expectation. She walked into the dormitory, took off her shoes, got into the quilt, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about how to persuade Li Tianlan. Today's negotiation was doomed to have no result. Li Tianlan really didn't intend to cooperate with Zhongzhou state, but he also didn't decide to join forces with the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai could see his hesitation, so Qin Weibai was not sure what the result of today's negotiation would be. But if she wanted to persuade Li Tianlan, it was necessary to talk pillow talk. There was a question that was actually very important. That was the question she asked Wang Xianxia. And Wang Xianxia also gave her the answer. This could make her see a lot of things clearly, and even confirm some things. In this way, she naturally knew what was the best choice for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai closed her eyes. In the darkness, there seemed to be a blue notebook in the depths of her memory. It was not Dongqing Huangtu's notes. It was her notes that were still sleeping in Switzerland. Those memories, which she didn't know belonged to the past or the future, and whether they were illusory or real, became words engraved in the notebook in the depths of her memory. It might be a lot of stories because it involved a lot of people. But what each person recorded on the paper was only a few short sentences. It was like history, or even simpler than history. It was about Wang Xiaoyao. There was only one sentence in the blue notebook, 12 short words. If you deserve to die, you will die. If you seek benevolence and get benevolence, you will not be free. Qin Weibai was deep in thought. Dongqing Wudi was waiting for a call. Maybe not just him. At this moment, many powerful figures in Zhongzhou state were waiting for a phone call or a notice. Bai Qingqian sat opposite Dongqing Wudi and was silent. Since Wang Xianxia showed the strongest side of Beihai, the situation in the northeast of Zhongzhou state had been very subtle. As a member of the parliament of Zhongzhou state, as the executive minister of the army headquarters and the commander of the border Praetorian Corps of Zhongzhou state, Dongqing Wudi came to the northeast to inspect the Black Dragon army more frequently, which also made it convenient for him to meet Bai Qingqian. Now Dongqing Wudi inspected the Black Dragon army again, but it was obvious that his current focus was not here at all. What will be the result? Bai Qingqian lowered her voice and asked softly. It's hard to say. Dongqing Wudi shook his head solemnly. But according to the time, it should be almost time for the result. What do you want the result to be? Bai Qingqian asked softly. In recent years, the couple's relationship, which had been frozen for many years, had rapidly warmed up, almost returning to the period when they just got married. When they were alone, the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. I don't know. Dongqing Wudi thought for a moment. It is said that Wang Qinglei privately criticized some of Kunlun City's ways of doing things. If this news is true, Kunlun City should be the biggest bargaining chip of Zhongzhou state. Exchanged Tanan with Kunlun City. He was silent and did not speak for a while. Exchanged Tiannan with Kunlun City. No one could say that such an exchange was a loss. In other words, as long as Li Tianlan was willing to get Kunlun City, he would lead the Li family back to the peak more than 20 years ago. The god of war of Zhongzhou state. This position was the glory of the Li family for hundreds of years. If Li Tianlan was unwilling to give up Tiannan, it was obvious that he wanted to lead the Li family to a new path. Similar to the Wang family of Beihai. Maybe not exactly the same, but for Zhongzhou state, the two were essentially the same. Such a choice, for Dongqing Wudi, was also a little complicated. No matter how close his relationship with Li Tianlan was, he was still a soldier after all. He might not be disappointed with Li Tianlan, but he always felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. In fact, the president originally invited me and Qin Fangqing to go to the desert this time. Dongqing Wudi said softly. The first, second, and third giants of Zhongzhou state went to the desert at the same time. It was a little too much. And then? Bai Qingqian was stunned and asked. And then I'm here. Dongqing Wudi smiled. If I go, Tianlan will be a little embarrassed. If I don't go, I will face the president and the prime minister alone. Everything he does is his own choice. He paused and whispered, no matter what he chooses, I will support him. Chapter 797. When the roar of the helicopter's rotor sounded, Qin Weibai frowned slightly and opened her eyes. The light in the luxurious room had become dark. The hazy moonlight shone through the window, like a layer of gauze. Qin Weibai sat up from the bed, shook her head gently, and got up to the window. This was the highest place in the desert prison with a wide view. Looking out from here, the traces of the helicopter leaving were still clear. The yellow sand rolled up slowly fell from the sky with a large amount of smoke and dust. The helicopter had flown far away, and only the signal lights kept flashing, looking a little determined. Another helicopter was still parked in front of the desert prison, and it seemed very lonely. Qin Weibai's eyes gradually became clear. She turned around, found a bathrobe, and walked into the bathroom to take a shower. When she came out again, she had become the calm patriarch of the Lin clan. She dried her hair and walked out of the dormitory. Outside the dormitory, a plump and enchanting young woman was walking over. When she saw Qin Weibai, she subconsciously paused, and then gently bowed and said, "Madam." Qin Weibai nodded. "Has the head of state left?" "He just left." The young woman whispered. "How was the talk?" Qin Weibai walked to the conference room and asked casually. She didn't expect to get any answer, but she didn't expect to hear the content. I don't know the details, but His Highness and the Prime Minister seem to have quarreled, and their words were very fierce, the young woman said with trepidation. She could appear here not because she had any special ability, but because she was Xiao Mahai's sister. Because her appearance and figure were good enough, and because her charm and temperament were tempting enough. In the end, she was just an ordinary woman. She knew that Li Tianlan was a big shot, but for her, there was no big shot more impactful than the president and the prime minister. An hour ago, when she went to the conference room to deliver fruit, she clearly heard the quarrel in the conference room. On the news broadcast, the voice of the prime minister, who had always been gentle, was loud and angry. Li Tianlan was tit for tat and did not give in at all. The young woman finally understood how strong the young man whose brother had been flattering was. But when she thought of his opponent, the young woman inevitably felt a little uneasy. Qin Weibai paused and then continued to move forward. The two figures passed by the lounge. Wang, patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai Xianxia, was still sitting there, neither fast nor slow, neither arrogant nor impatient. It seemed that he could sit there until the end of time. Qin Weibai did not stop and walked toward the conference room. Xiao Mahai, who had been guarding here, silently stepped back when he saw Qin Weibai. He lowered his head respectfully. Qin Weibai appreciated it a little. She wasn't admiring Xiao Mahai's attitude towards her. She admired Xiao Mahai's attitude towards Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing. The ridiculously sumptuous banquet at noon had proven this point. But now, Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing left the desert prison, but Xiao Mahai still stood there, not even sending them off. This was undoubtedly a kind of attitude. This was not the so-called proof of allegiance. It was a true attitude. Loyal and devoted. In terms of strength and ability, Xiao Mahai wasn't bad. Plus, he was the center of attention. This person could be used. You've worked hard. Have you eaten? Qin Weibai stopped and greeted Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai was obviously stunned for a moment and seemed a little flattered. He scratched his head and smiled honestly. What would you like to eat, madam? Something light. Don't be too extravagant. You go and prepare. We'll have a meal together later and have a drink with His Highness. Qin Weibai's smile was faint and just right. Okay, got it. Xiao Mahai nodded and rushed straight to the kitchen. Qin Weibai looked at his back and smiled. Then she pushed the door open and walked into the conference room. The conference room was filled with smoke. Li Tianlan sat alone in the chair, relaxed, holding a cigarette and expressionless. He didn't even notice Qin Weibai coming in. What are you thinking about? Why are you so absorbed? Qin Weibai walked over and stood behind him. She reached out and rubbed his shoulders. Li Tianlan put out the cigarette but leaned back and took a long breath. He shook his head and said, I'm not thinking about anything. I just think it's good to be alone for a while. Do you think I'm bothering you? Qin Weibai tilted her head and gently raised the corner of her mouth. Li Tianlan smiled and patted the soft little hand on his shoulder. How was the talk? Qin Weibai asked. It's neither good nor bad. They want me to have a clear attitude. Li Tianlan shook his head and said, but I didn't make a clear statement. This result was not good for either Li Tianlan or the parliament. At best, it was not the worst. Before the new result appeared, both sides could reluctantly accept it, but that was all. Therefore, in the end, this negotiation was more or less on bad terms, but not to the extent of falling out. Zhongzhou state might reduce its assistance to Tianan because of Li Tianlan's current attitude. But for Xinyuan City, which was already on the right track, it would not have much impact. And Li Tianlan also needed some time to think about it before he could make up his mind. Haven't you decided yet? Qin Weibai asked softly. It's easier said than done, Li Tianlan shook his head. Zhongzhou state had shown enough sincerity. Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing had analyzed all kinds of possibilities for him. As long as he was willing, Emperor Dong's palace could completely replace Kunlun City in 2 or 3 years. This talk was very in-depth. Kunlun City, Tianan. If the two sides were put on a scale, the weight was almost the same, but the position was different. It was impossible to say who was higher or lower. Li Tianlan really didn't know how to choose for a moment. Accepting the olive branch of Xianxia state and facing the possible suppression of the parliament in a few years or joining hands with Beihai to play against the parliament, the risk was the same. The key was what Li Tianlan did. Such a choice would affect Li Tianlan, Emperor Dong's palace, Xianyuan city, and even the fate of the Li family for many years to come. Li Tianlan was not indecisive, but this matter really needed to be cautious. The promise I made was that I would not join hands with the Wang family of Beihai for the time being. Li Tianlan said softly. He would not join hands with the Wang family of Beihai for the time being. The focus of this sentence was not the second half. It was temporary. No one knew how long this temporary would last. Qin Weibai understood and said softly, "You want to see the trump card of the Wang family of Beihai?" Li Tianlan's temporary could be a long time or a short time. Now that all the superpowers seemed to be targeting the Wang family of Beihai, the parliament of Xianxia state understood that Li Tianlan would stand by for the time being and would definitely speed up the action against the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan wanted to see what the Wang family of Beihai would do to deal with this situation, see what trump card they had, and then decide whether to cooperate with them. This was completely understandable. More than that, Li Tianlan smiled and said, "It depends on the offer of the Wang family of Beihai." Chapter 798. The cabin that was completely shrouded in darkness emitted a faint light. The faint light illuminated Qin Fangqing's face into an extremely gloomy green color, looking gloomy and terrifying. The atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Li Huaqing sat opposite Qin Fangqing, looking in the direction of the desert prison, narrowing his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. With a long sigh, Qin Fangqing's body relaxed slightly, and his complexion gradually returned to normal. Li Huaqing smiled and said in a calm voice, "Don't mind him. Li Tianlan is not an ordinary young man, neither is Wang Xingxiao." Qin Fangqing clenched his teeth and let out a muffled snort, not saying anything. Today's trip to the desert could be said to be the biggest stain in his political career. He had been directly contradicted by two young people, one discussing his life and death, and the other directly questioning his standpoint. Qin Fangqing had wanted to fall out with them more than once, but in the end he had endured it. Because he couldn't move Li Tianlan. Wang Xingxiao couldn't move either. At the very least, today in the desert, in a relatively private setting, when facing those two youngsters, if they decided not to give him face, he could only suffer. The other party was not an ordinary young man. Of the two of them, one was meditating in prison. One carried the Wang family on his back and moved forward with difficulty. This pair of young people was no longer the arrogant and domineering playboys who relied on their elders. Their power and ability had already enabled them to stand at the peak of Xianxia state. Even in the face of him, the prime minister, they could maintain a fairly detached and calm attitude. Qin Fangqing closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said with a self-deprecating smile, "I'm old. It's fine if some grievances are beneficial to the bigger picture." Li Huaqing thought for a while and said softly. Qin Fangqing nodded and did not speak. He could understand the meaning of these words, and even he himself was such a person. He was indeed a prime minister who put the interests of Xianxia state above everything else. As the number 2 figure in Xianxia state and the leader of the prince group, not everyone had the courage to decisively kill a member of his group. Qin Fangqing had done this before. He might have his own selfish motives, but he had never been ambiguous about the major issues of right and wrong for so many years. However, as time passed, especially during this period of time, his mentality gradually became unbalanced. That is, coming after a long time in power, the reluctance, anxiety, and apprehension of losing power. The game between Xianxia state and Beihai had reached a critical moment. The negotiation between the parliament and Li Tianlan had also reached a critical moment. All kinds of things, constantly changing situations, surging undercurrents, rising winds and scudding clouds. But in the end, it was still because of this time next year. It was the general election of Xianxia state. This is the real focus. Everything could come to an end with this change. At the very least, there would be peace for a long time. From this year to next, it would be the last year of Chen Fangqing's term. Chen Fangqing really wanted to do something because compared to Li Huaqing, who was likely to be re-elected next year, he really didn't have much time, especially Li Tianlan. It could even be said that he was extremely eager to make Li Tianlan agree to their conditions. Chen Fangqing dreamed of tying such a heavenly son who could serve Zhongzhou state for decades to Zhongzhou state. It was no exaggeration to say that if Li Tianlan could agree to their conditions today, then Chen Fangqing would be the real main force when Kunlun City was taken over by Emperor Dong's palace. Attacking Beihai and trapping Li Tianlan were Chen Fangqing's biggest demands in the coming year. If he did this well, it would be enough to lay the foundation for the pattern of Zhongzhou state in the next few decades. After next year, Chen Fangqing shook his head and hesitated to speak. Li Huaqing sighed slightly, and there was bitterness in his eyes. Next year would be Chen Fangqing's 10th year in office. For Dongqing Wudi, this was his 5th year in office. With Dongqing Wudi's prestige and achievements in the military of Zhongzhou state, no one could stop his re-election unless there was a great accident. He was a member of the parliament of Zhongzhou state, a director, and the standing minister of the army headquarters. Now, after the president and the prime minister, Dongqing Wudi ranked 3rd. After next year, when Chen Fangqing retired, the new prime minister could not be ahead of Dongqing Wudi. At that time, Dongqing Wudi would become the number 2 figure in Zhongzhou state, ranking 2nd only to Li Huaqing. Because of the particularity of the military, the retirement age of the main leaders of the army headquarters could be appropriately relaxed. Li Huaqing would inevitably retire in the next 5 years, but Dongqing Wudi might not. This meant that Dongqing Wudi would become stronger than he was now after next year, and the giant group would get through the period of weakness after the reshuffle more quickly. The first was the giant group. The position of the head of the cabinet had not been decided yet. This position had even become the fiercest battlefield for all parties. The prince group, the giant group, and the academics were all ambitious and had strong figures. If there had been no accident in Beihai, this position should have belonged to Wen Xiyuan, the speaker of Beihai. Now, although Wen Xiyuan was in a precarious situation, it could not be said that he had no competition for this position. As a result, the situation became more complicated. If it was the academics who finally got this position, it would be okay. Li Huaqing and the new prime minister could completely check and balance Dongqing Wudi. But with Li Huaqing's retention, the academics had little chance, and it was difficult for the one from the giant group to form a real tacit understanding with Li Huaqing. If this position fell into the hands of the giant group or the southeast group, it would be a nightmare. Then Li Huaqing would even face a more difficult situation than now. Shang Wang Qinglei? Chen Fangqing pondered for a long time before asking tentatively. Li Huaqing finally stopped hiding his bitter smile and shook his head slightly. He's not you. Chen Fangqing was silent. Wang Qinglei's current qualifications were sufficient, but he was not Chen Fangqing. That was to say, he was not willing to take this position. His goal was very clear, which was the position of the president 5 years later. How could he give up that position to be the prime minister 5 years in advance? Li Tianlan is the key. Chen Fangqing sighed softly. What a pity. If he could tie Li Tianlan down, he could really change a lot of things. But Li Tianlan did not say anything. It's not necessarily a bad thing that he didn't say anything. Li Huaqing said quietly, at least we still have time to operate now. I just don't know how much the Wang family of Beihai will offer. Wang Yuetong, Chen Fangqing suddenly asked, still can't find her. Li Huaqing's eyes narrowed. No matter how tacit they were, this question was a little too sensitive. He took a deep look at Chen Fangqing and shook his head. I've looked for her, but there's no news. The biggest price of the Wang family of Beihai is probably Wang Yuetong. Chen Fangqing lowered his head and said slowly. A very sharp killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 799. When the sky just brightened, Wang Xingxiao, who had meditated all night, opened his eyes. Uninvited, he naturally stayed in prison for a night. At dinner yesterday, a prison guard brought him some food, 4 dishes and a soup, neither good nor bad. Then no one paid attention to the new patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. No one arranged a room for him. The lounge became his guest room. Wang Xianxia was calm, as if he didn't feel the slightest shame of being ignored. He just waited quietly, waiting for Li Tianlan to meet him. The palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace and the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. The superiority of the two identities was no longer important here. What was important was that Wang Xianxiao needed Li Tianlan's help, so he had to be humble. Wang Xianxiao had enough psychological preparation on the way here. At breakfast, the prison guard brought the standard prison breakfast. Since he was here, Wang Xianxiao ate some, then closed his eyes to rest, ready for the next negotiation. The morning passed quickly. At lunch, Xiao Mahai, the warden of Desert Prison, finally came to the door of the lounge. He smiled calmly and politely. "Mr. Wang, His Highness invites you to have lunch with him." Wang Xianxiao smiled and thanked Xiao Mahai politely. Xiao Mahai turned and led the way. There was a very exquisite dining hall in the prison that didn't have much spare space. It was not far from the dormitory. When he approached the dining hall, Wang Xianxiao saw Xiaoqing and several prison guards who were busy. They were bringing extremely exquisite dishes into the dining hall, and a plump and beautiful young woman was holding a bottle of good wine that hadn't been opened yet as she walked over. Wang Xianxiao glanced at Xiao Mahai and suddenly felt a little emotional. He chuckled and said, "I didn't expect General to find the most suitable path for yourself here. In the future, when the palace lord leaves the prison, whether he takes you with him or puts you elsewhere, General can be said to have a high position in the future. I congratulate General in advance." Xiao Mahai smiled calmly and said in a flat tone, "I'll follow His Highness's arrangement. It doesn't matter if I stay here for a few more years." Wang Xianxiao glanced at him, nodded, and pushed open the door of the dining room. Li Tianlan sat in the main seat facing the door, facing a table full of dishes, and kept eating, not waiting for Wang Xianxiao to sit down. He looked relaxed and casual. Wang Xianxiao remained calm, but his eyes had become extremely solemn. Li Tianlan waved his hand casually and continued eating. His eating speed was very fast, but it did not ruin his image. It was not the kind of person who would devour everything in one bite. Instead, it was a kind of speed, or even a unique sense of rhythm. It was fast, precise, and meticulous. Wang Xianxiao sat down opposite him, looked at him, and did not speak for a while. "What do you want to talk to me about?" Li Tianlan was eating, but his voice was still clear and stable. Wang Xianxiao didn't seem to expect that the carefully prepared negotiation would turn out like this. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, "I hope Beihai can reach a comprehensive strategic cooperation with Emperor Dong's palace." "Reason?" Li Tianlan asked. "I've already told Patriarch Qin the reason yesterday." Wang Xianxiao paused. In fact, when he walked into the restaurant and did not see Qin Wei by, his heart had already sunk slightly. Li Tianlan did not speak. Wang Xianxiao continued, "The current development model of Emperor Dong's palace is somewhat similar to that of Beihai province, but the difference is that Emperor Dong's palace is still Emperor Dong's palace, and Xianyuan City can't represent Tianan for the time being. You still have a long way to go to integrate Emperor Dong's palace and Xianyuan City and annex Tianan. I don't know if you have read the history of Beihai, but I can responsibly tell you that this process will not be smooth, and it will not be smooth. If you are willing to cooperate with Beihai, Beihai is willing to give you enough support. In 10 or 20 years, Beihai province and the Wang family of Beihai will be the future Emperor Dong's palace and Tianan. Zhongzhou state will only choose to wait and see if the two forces reach a new balance." He looked at Li Tianlan and solemnly said, "This is good for both of us." "That's not what I want to hear." Li Tianlan paused and looked at Wang Xianxiao. Wang Xianxiao raised his eyebrows. "Talk about the situation, the future, the balance, and the reason. Why do you say this? It's obvious. If you say it, I'll understand it. If you don't say it, I'll understand it. So, it's better not to say it." He lowered his head and sped up his eating. He said blandly, "If the parliament wants to cooperate with me, I only need to nod, and I can quickly replace Kunlun City and become the new god of war of Zhongzhou state. Tiannan will still be the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace. This is the price they offered. So, you don't have to analyze all kinds of possibilities. Why don't you just tell me what you can give me? Wang Xingxiao's pupils contracted slightly for a moment. He had already guessed that Zhongzhou State might replace Kunlun City with Emperor Dong's palace, but he did not expect Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing to be so decisive. He picked up the wine glass in front of him and took a sip. He said in a low voice, "What Zhongzhou State currently gives to Tiannan, with the strength of Beihai, I can also give you some weapons and armaments. Although the models are different, there won't be any difference in performance. In terms of connections, we can also build a real network for you and Kunlun City." Li Tianlan looked at Wang Xingxiao and said blandly, "This is what Zhongzhou State can give me. Can you also give it to me?" Wang Xingxiao was silent for a long time. "I can't give you Kunlun City," he said slowly, "but I can give you Tiannan. As long as we reach an agreement, after the Wang family of Beihai temporarily stabilizes the situation, I can help Emperor Dong's palace take over everything in Tiannan. This is the price I can offer." His thoughts gradually became clear. Zhongzhou State gives you Kunlun City because it wants you to return to the old path of the Li family and protect Zhongzhou State. I don't deny the glory and height of the Li family in those days, but compared with Beihai, such a development model has too many restrictions. The Li family's foundation is in Zhongzhou State, but it can never represent Zhongzhou State. I suggest you choose another path, the path of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai doesn't need to represent Zhongzhou State, but no one is qualified to represent Beihai except us. Tiannan can be the Tiannan of Zhongzhou State, but first of all, it should be your Tiannan first. Not your Tiannan, but first of all, it should be the Tiannan of Zhongzhou State. The two are different, very different. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and nodded. "Very convincing. If we cooperate, what do you need me to do?" Wang Shengxiao looked at Li Tianlan quietly. After a long time, he suddenly asked, "Why don't you tell me what you can do if we cooperate?" Li Tianlan glanced at him and slowly drank a glass of wine. "The chaos of Beihai is around the corner," he said softly. Wang Xingxiao's eyes narrowed and he nodded. "It's obvious. I can't go to Beihai when it's the most chaotic. I have to stay here. I have to stay in the desert prison. This is what I promised the council." Li Tianlan said slowly, "Under such circumstances, how do you want me to help you?" Chapter 800. In this case, how do you want me to help you? This question was very interesting. It seemed to be a refusal, but it also seemed to be meaningful. Wang Shengxiao was silent for a while and then chuckled. His whole body slowly relaxed, and he looked a little presumptuous and casual. "Your promise to the parliament is meaningless," Wang Shengxiao said quietly. Li Tianlan's eyes did not change, and he said indifferently, "Go on. You're not stupid, and you're not stupid either. Even if you're not being considerate, Chairman Qin will help you think of everything." Wang Shengxiao said, "The parliament hopes that you will go to Beihai province to clean up the mess when or after the chaos in Beihai. But you promised them that you will not go to Beihai. You refused their request for cooperation. At least, you never agreed. You stay in the desert prison and seem to be neutral. You don't want to get involved in this matter, but what good is it for you?" Li Tianlan lowered his head and ate without saying a word. The Wang family of Beihai is in a bad situation now, but how good can Emperor Dong's palace be? It seems to be developing rapidly, but you can't see the crisis behind it. I can be sure that the future development of Xianyuan City will not be smooth. Now the large amount of assistance provided by Zhongzhou State is based on the situation that everything is still under their control. As you leave the desert prison, Emperor Dong's palace will develop rapidly, and after you want to turn Emperor Dong's palace into another Beihai, Zhongzhou State's suppression will follow. Under such circumstances, you didn't agree to cooperate with the parliament. It seems to be neutral, but it will also make the parliament reduce its support for you. You haven't completely finalized the cooperation with Zhongzhou State, and you can't get the support of the Wang family of Beihai. It seems to be neutral, but in fact, it doesn't please either side. You won't do this kind of stupid thing, and Qin Weibai won't do it either. Li Tianlan still did not say a word. So I'm very happy. Wang Xianxia said quietly, I'm very happy that you can make such a promise to Zhongzhou State. Because such a promise, in my opinion, means that you have decided to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. You may not leave the prison, but I can be sure that you have enough power to affect the chaos of the Wang family of Beihai. So, we have a good cooperation? Li Tianlan put down the bowl and chopsticks, wiped his mouth with a tissue, and raised his eyes. Are you done? Wang Xianxiao narrowed his eyes and looked straight into Li Tianlan's eyes. It's a good idea, but it's all wrong. Li Tianlan smiled. I'm not as complicated as you think, and I'm not as determined as you think. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think what's there to be afraid of. I didn't completely reject Zhongzhou State. I just left some leeway. It's not that I've decided to cooperate with you. His Highness, God of War, Dong Huang, Heavenly Sun, they're all bullshit. After all, I'm also a mortal and I'll hesitate. Tiannan is good, and so is Kunlun City. My choice is likely to affect the path of Emperor Dong's palace for many years to come. I haven't made up my mind, so I left some leeway for both sides. Zhongzhou State can give me a lot of benefits. I see you just to give you a chance to persuade me. Otherwise, if I go to Zhongzhou State to talk about cooperation now, the President and the Prime Minister will welcome me 100%, and Zhongzhou State's aid to Tiannan will also be greatly increased. Li Tianlan leaned forward slightly, knocked on the table in front of him, and looked at Wang Xianxiao. There may be a crisis behind Emperor Dong's palace, but it's not impossible to solve. It's just another path, the same glory. I don't need you to tell me which path is better. I have my own judgment. So, from your standpoint, say what you want to say. We can talk, but you should restrain your confidence. Wang Xianxiao sat opposite Li Tianlan and was silent for a long time. Li Tianlan didn't urge him. Wang Xianxiao knew very well that Li Tianlan was waiting for his offer. Even he only had one chance to make an offer. Wang Xianxiao pondered and didn't know what to say for a moment. This was the most critical part of the negotiation. In these few minutes, he had to offer a price that satisfied Li Tianlan once and for all. If it worked, they would have a happy cooperation. If it didn't work, they would drift apart. The pressure was indeed on Wang Xianxiao. Because both Tiannan and Kunlun City were good. Regardless of what Li Tianlan thought in his heart, at least the fact was clear that he did have another choice that could be equally glorious. If you stay in the desert prison, what can you do for Beihai when the chaos breaks out in Beihai? Wang Xianxiao asked slowly after pondering for a long time. This kind of cooperation might be long-term, but in the short-term crisis, what could Li Tianlan do to make him think about how to offer a price? I can do a lot of things. Li Tianlan played with the wine glass in his hand and said casually, for example, I may be able to give you some of the information you need most now. The giant group can also help you resist some of the pressure from Zhongzhou State. In short, I can do what you need me to do and what you want me to do, provided that you make me feel that it's worth it. Wang Xianxiao's pupils suddenly contracted for a moment. What you need me to do? What you want me to do? I can do it. He savored this sentence carefully, and his face gradually turned a little pale. Really? He really needed the information about Li Tianlan and Samsara Palace. He also needed the support of the giant group very much. But in the chaos, what he needed most was Li Tianlan's combat capability. Li Tianlan was in the desert, thousands of miles away from Beihai. How could his combat capability be reflected? Wang Xianxiao didn't believe that Li Tianlan's sword light could cross thousands of miles to fight against an invincible realm expert. He was no longer a chosen one, but an immortal. Unless he directly tore up the promise with the parliament of Zhongzhou State after agreeing to cooperate. Doing so would not only damage Li Tianlan's reputation, but it would also be too intense. It depends on you. Li Tianlan said blandly. What exactly should I do? Wang Xianxiao asked. Li Tianlan looked up at him. He didn't say anything. Wang Xianxiao gradually understood. He narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then said solemnly, everything I just said can be counted as my conditions. I still hold the same view. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai may be each other's opponents, but they should also be each other's allies. You, me, and Zhongzhou state all need a balance. If you are willing to cooperate, the Wang family of Beihai is willing to do its best to help you take down Tiannan and give you most of the technology and armaments you want. In addition, Beihai also needs the cooperation of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. Cooperate with what? Cooperate with us to find our new patriarch. Wang Xianxia said word by word. His voice was a little bitter. New patriarch? Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. Wang Yuetong. Wang Xianxia looked at the sumptuous table in front of him, and his voice was a little faint. Compared with me, my sister is more qualified to lead the current Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan was silent for a moment. Is this condition enough? Wang Xingxiao stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and asked slowly. One more thing. Li Tianlan stood up and looked down at Wang Xingxiao. Go ahead. Wang Xingxiao nodded. Li Tianlan took a deep look at him and walked to the door of the restaurant. When he was about to walk out of the restaurant, he paused and said calmly, I want the coldness of 9 states. Chapter 801. The helicopter that stayed outside the prison for a night finally left slowly. The desert returned to peace. But Xiao Mahai, who witnessed all this, felt unprecedentedly restless. He personally sent Wang Shengxiao out of the prison and watched him get on the helicopter. He watched the helicopter fly farther and farther away, turning into a small black spot under the scorching sun and finally disappearing completely. This was Li Tianlan's order. But when Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing left last night, Li Tianlan did not order him to send them off. Did this mean that His Highness had made a choice between Beihai and Zhongzhou state? The flying yellow sand slowly fell from the sky. Xiao Mahai slowly turned around and walked into the prison. Zhongzhou state. He knew everything that was happening in the outside world. Although his position was awkward, his identity and status were there. In the entire Zhongzhou state, how many officers at the level of lieutenant general could there be? So he could see some things clearly. But Xiao Mahai couldn't understand Li Tianlan's choice. It was not doubt, but he really couldn't understand. He was not qualified to get in touch with the inside information and the trend of the situation. Naturally, he wouldn't know why choosing Beihai was better than choosing Zhongzhou state. He didn't understand these, but he knew very well that Li Tianlan, Wang Xingxiao, Dongqing Wudi, Li Huaqing, Qin Fangqing, the young and old people standing at the top of the 6 groups in Zhongzhou state had begun to build a magnificent stage. There was bound to be a place for him on this stage. Xiao Mahai smiled contentedly. When he was about to enter the prison gate, he turned around and looked at the blazing sun outside. This world. In another year, it would be the era of Donghuang. Everyone in Emperor Dong's palace would stand on this stage. If he had a choice, Xiao Mahai still wanted to stand by Li Tianlan's side. He didn't stay here. He turned around and strode into the prison. In the dining room, Li Tianlan's meal was not over yet. The dishes on the table were almost wiped out. Li Tianlan lowered his head and slowly stirred the thick soup in front of him. He left. Seeing Xiao Mahai come in, Li Tianlan asked softly. Yes. Xiao Mahai nodded and said, it seems that he was satisfied when he left. I'm satisfied too. A voice rang out abruptly. Xiao Mahai turned his head subconsciously. In her sight, Li Tianlan's mobile phone was on the dining table and the screen was on. A handsome middle-aged man with an unusually sharp aura was sitting quietly in his seat. Looking at his background, it seemed that he was in a ward. Xiao Mahai took a closer look. The person on the phone looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He was handsome and could even be said to be a real beauty. However, this person's aura was too strong. It was sharp, heavy, and unpredictable, so much so that people could not help but admire him. Subconsciously ignoring his appearance, he sat quietly in his seat and looked at Xiao Mahai. His smile was light, but it revealed an indescribable confidence and majesty. This kind of bearing was indescribable, but it was unforgettable. Xiao Mahai opened his mouth. Of course, he knew the man in the phone. Now in the entire Xianxia state, even if people of a certain status had not seen him, they must have heard of his name. But when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Let me introduce myself, General Xiao. I'm a holy disciple, Wei Kunlun. In the phone, holy disciple's gentle and generous voice sounded. Currently, I'm Li Tianlan's deputy. Your Excellency, Deputy Palace Master. Xiao Mahai bowed slightly. He never minded being humble to the people around Li Tianlan. I've heard a lot about you. You're welcome, General. You've been with His Highness for so long, and His Highness is very satisfied with you. Maybe in a year or two when you come out of prison, I'll have to call you leader. Holy disciple laughed and said, Guess what His Highness just talked to me about? Xiao Mahai subconsciously turned his head and glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan lowered his head and drank his soup calmly. Xiao Mahai wisely said nothing. His Highness talked to me about several positions. There will probably be changes in the army headquarters next year. Secretary General Bai will be promoted to the parliament, and the position of Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters will be vacant. Minister Dongqing will definitely take it. In addition, Marshal Yi will probably go further next year, and he will also have to give up the position of General Staff Headquarters. This position is very sensitive. The Border Control Corps has also made some big moves recently. They are all old subordinates of Minister Dongqing, and he knows them very well. Minister Dongqing plans to move them in the near future. Thunder God is probably going to move. The Blood Battalion is close to Tianan, and this position will also be vacant. In the Navy, the male general is probably going to be transferred, and the adjustment is not small. Xiao Mahai listened to all this with his mouth agape. Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, Chief of General Staff, Commander of the Blood Battalion, and Commander of the Navy. 4 positions. And they were 4 positions of terrifying value. 2 of them were at the peak of lieutenant generals, and they could even be promoted to admiral. And the other 2 were real admirals, especially the second one. If he did well, he might even become a marshal. What did this mean? Well, Xiao Mahai opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. These 4 positions are more suitable. You choose one. Li Tianlan said slowly, You can choose whatever you want, but the General Staff Headquarters is a little difficult. You don't have enough experience, but now there is still time, so you can start. The Chief of the General Staff of Xianxia State. This was definitely the military general at the peak of Xianxia State. Xiao Mahai's heart beat fiercely a few times. He did think that following Li Tianlan would change his current embarrassing situation. But he never dreamed that this change would be so drastic. 4 positions. No matter which one he chose, it could be said to be a real step to the top. The General Staff Headquarters? He was the first to rule out this option. This was the most prominent position, but it had always been the backyard of the Southeast Group. If the cooperation between the 2 sides changed in the future, it would inevitably put Li Tianlan in a difficult position if he occupied this position. The Navy? It sounded quite good, but he didn't think he had the strength of General Nan. In his opinion, if Thunder God wanted to move, it was the most suitable to replace General Nan. The position of Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters was undoubtedly quite good, and the hidden power was unimaginable. Moreover, if he went to the Army Headquarters, his boss would be Bai Qingzhao, and his immediate boss would be Dongqing Wudi. He could completely cooperate with the 2 big shots to control the Army Headquarters. And the Blood Battalion was in Nanyun Province. It was close to Tianan. If he chose the Blood Battalion, he could directly support Emperor Dong's palace and the Freedom Corps in the future. Xiao Mahai's mouth was dry, and he was so nervous that his whole body was trembling. Saint looked at him playfully and didn't speak. Don't worry, Li Tianlan said lightly, you can take your time to think about it. Xiao Mahai hesitated and seemed to make up his mind. He smiled bitterly and said, Your Highness, at the beginning, I did have the idea of using you to leave the desert prison. But to be honest, I'm not sure where I should go after leaving the desert prison. I still have some self-knowledge. In terms of ability, I have it, but I'm not the best. Let me go to these 4 positions. I should be able to do a good job, but I feel like I'm treading on thin ice every day. I don't think I like this kind of feeling. Li Tanlan took a sip of the soup and agreed. Xiao Mahai smiled and scratched his head. But the deputy palace master said that your highness is very satisfied with me. I think I've done a good job by your highness's side. If possible, your highness, I'd better stay with you. I don't want the position of lieutenant general. I'll follow you to deal with some small things. Saint raised his eyebrows slightly. Li Tianlan raised his head and glanced at Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai's eyes were calm. Everything he said and did came from the bottom of his heart. There was no need to lie. Li Tianlan looked at him for a while. You don't want any of these 4 positions? Li Tianlan asked. In fact, these 4 positions are very good. It can even be said that they are all my dreams. Xiao Mahai smiled cheekily and cheekily said, but compared with the positions beside your highness, these 4 positions suddenly don't look good. Li Tianlan, Saint burst out laughing. Well said. Get out. Li Tianlan laughed and scolded him. He kicked Xiao Mahai and said, get me a bowl of soup. Xiao Mahai smiled and turned to walk out of the restaurant. From today on, you are the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan looked at his back and said slowly, you're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.